does work with his elderly parents quite. That's my guess, but normally he still squeezes out some information. So hopefully he's all well. But nonetheless, we'll press, and then of course we'll rejoin with him or have him join or whatever. But uh, I'm sure Shipley's en route. But Jake, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Glad to be out of prison. It's interesting that we're coming up on the 3 year anniversary of January 6th and all that has come out in between now and then. Um, and the way the narrative has been flipped on its head, the way that still Speaker Johnson hasn't released all the footage like he said he would. No surprise there. Leave it to a politician to give you the thumbs up and then the middle finger after they get your loyalty.
What's missing, Jake? Is it just is it still being released, or and forgive my not being on top of this. There's just so much happening right now in the world. Shipping I'm going to bring up, but I know he released a lot. Is it still being released, or did it come to a halt? They playing some security game. What's the situation, Jake?
As far as I know, it's a drop in the bucket. They haven't released but a couple of gigs, and there's like a terabyte or something worth of video. I think that they might have released something like 90 hours out of 100 or out of 44,000 hours. Bill might have more insight on that as to the exact number, but as far as I know, it's a drop in the bucket. And we have not gotten everything that we were told we were going to get.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. Hang in there. Shipley, just do a comp check. How do you read us?
I hear you. Do you hear me now that I turned my mic on?
Yeah, loud and clear. Listen, Jake and I were talking about we these things happen. Just haven't heard from crypto yet. So I appreciate you guys still pressing and having me sort of next man up. So thanks
So
and
send somebody out on a python hunt.
okay.
He might have got lost wandering around the Everglades.
Yeah, like I said, I spoke to him at this point almost 2 hours ago. Things seem normal. He had mentioned space, nothing out of the ordinary. So, hoping the best and hoping all is well. I'm sure it is. I just know that his parents are elderly, so that's kind
Yeah,
of that's
yeah,
kind of my guess.
yeah. We all know
Um,
that. So
Yep. So let me do this. I was just talking to Jake, and he just loosely mentioned before we really do a dive in here is a 3 year anniversary coming up. He's talking about not enough footage being released. He's not surprised, but what's going on? Um, wh- what are we doing tonight, Shipley? Can you give us a little outline? What are we doing here?
well, I think Jake and I had just exchanged messages briefly about the 3 year anniversary is coming up. Sort of how have things changed, if at all? The government seemed to go through a pause for several months, wasn't very active in terms of arresting new individuals. And then about 3 months ago, the pace seemed to quicken quite a bit. You saw 6, 8, 10 arrests a week from September through December. Um, 2 new arrests this morning of 2 Proud Boys down in Florida who had been a topic of some testimony in Chris Worrell's trial back in April. Um, and just coincidentally, the same day Chris was sentenced, which is what has me in D.C., prosecutor mentions to the judge that those 2 Proud Boys were arrested this morning. Also, I thought we could chat just briefly about the implications of the Supreme Court taking up the Fisher case on the 1512 count and the fact that the government has changed tactics a little bit in their charging, backing away from using the 1512 count. I haven't seen it used that much recently, but they've taken a new direction to try to continue to ask for sentences in the range of 36 to 60 months for most, well, for anybody charged with a felony. They're seem to be looking for that spot between 3 and 5 years for just about everybody charged with a felony. And where'd you end up, Jake? Oh yeah, 3 years and 5 months.
Yeah, but because of the 6 months of good time and doing RDAP, I got a year off my sentence because of FSA in the 6 months of good time. So I got out of prison after 27 months, like you said I would if I did RDAP and good time and all that stuff. And then I was released to halfway house and was in federal custody a total of 29 months.
Yeah, so I'll say this. This is an odd observation that I'm going to make, but just for the 11 people who managed to find their way in here to listen, there's quite a few spaces going on tonight with some
Yeah,
significant.
and
Uh,
don't feel too bad, guys, because this is recorded. So
Well, and also let's see if we can get everybody to retweet the space. If you guys don't mind, if you're in the audience, please retweet the space so we can get some more people in here.
yeah, absolutely.
the observation I was going to make that okay, it's no secret and it's used against me quite often. And actually, I'd like to ask Jake what his reaction to this was when we get that far. But when I was a prosecutor, and I spent 21 years as a federal prosecutor, I never even understood or cared to understand, what the difference between the sentence the judge announced and the amount of time the defendant actually served in custody. It wasn't until after I became a defense lawyer and another defense lawyer who I was friends with explained to me, you always got to explain to your client that, that number that they hear, that's not the real number. What comes out of the judge's mouth isn't really the amount of time that they serve. And you do this little calculation, this applies and that applies. And before you know it, presto changeo, and, the number's cut in half. And so my first conversation with Jake, or what I think it had to be our first conversation with Jake, I asked him, he's sitting in jail in Alexandria, Virginia, unhappy with the status of his prior representation. And I said, how long do you think you're going to be in jail, Jake? And he had the reaction you would expect. He said, well, I got 41 months and I've been here for 11, so I guess that I got to spend another 30 months in jail. And I said, and I think we figured out what month and year that was. And I said, nope, you'll be out probably 14 months earlier than that. And I think I hit it like on the nose or 1 month off. And he couldn't believe that what I was. He didn't have a reason to disbelieve me, but it had never been explained to him that it's not that as I say to clients, I say BOP math is not real math. You have to understand what BOP math means when you get a sentence of 41 months. And I went through the calculation with him, and basically said you probably do 27 months total time in custody, and he did 27 months. I think I said February of 2023, and it was March of 2023.
That is correct.
So today I had the same experience. Chris Worrell got 120 months today. The government wanted 168. I'm getting grief online because he got 120. And it's like, well, sometimes you're working with what you're working with, and I got 4 years less than what the government was asking for. Now, I think the government's request was a little bit, was overreach quite a bit. But what I had to tell Chris today, and it makes a difference, is Chris. Yeah, you just heard him say 120 months, but it's not going to be 120 months. When we did the math with Chris, I think it's going to work out to the mid 70s for him. Nobody wants to go to federal prison at all, but mid 70s is a lot better than 120, and it's certainly worlds better than 168, which is what the government was asking for. So did we win? Well, no, he's going to federal prison. Was the outcome maybe better than we had feared? I think so, and he thought so.
Chip, I'm just gonna kind of dive into some of these things here real quick. So the case that you're probably familiar with, that I'm most familiar with of all the J6 cases, because I went there and I watched it and I reported on it, was Big O, Richard Big O Barnett's, and he ended up with, I think off the top of my head, 4.5 years, and I guess he's been in for since approximately off the top of my head, maybe March or April ish. So I'm just ballparking it. What do you think he provided he does all the things right, and he's a model prisoner. Uh, what do you think he's looking at a 4.5 years
Okay, well,
ballpark?
we'll do the math here real quick. So if he's, let's say he's 54 months. First thing you do, because I don't think Big O had any time in custody, so he had no credit time. I, in fact, talked to Big O after he got sentenced. I talked to him the day before he was going down to surrender. We talked about his trial and his case and his appeal. Um, if you start at 54 months, first thing you do is you knock off 15% because that's good time credit. I think Jake can tell you, it's hard to figure out what bad time is. It's hard to figure out how you don't get good time credit unless you shiv somebody. Uh, but so you almost, in every instance you're going to get 15% off for good time. So if you start, so that's for him, that'd be 7.5 months. Let's give him 8 months. So you go from 54 to 46. So he's got 46 to serve. Now, if you have any kind of drug or alcohol use, excess alcohol or drug use in your history, the Bureau of Prisons wants to help with that. And Jake went through the program. He can tell you all about it. It's called RDAP, Residential Drug Alcohol Treatment Program. Never figured out what the T is. And it is a 9-month course. You live in a separate facility within the Bureau of Prisons facility where you're at. RDAP is separately housed. Everybody that's in the RDAP program lives together away from the rest of the population. It's 9 months start to finish. There's no partial credit. You've got to start it, you've got to finish it. If you finish it, do all the work successfully, and get credit for it, you get 1 year knocked off your sentence. So if Big O is in it, if he qualifies for it, and they try to qualify just about everybody, they don't make a lot of effort to disqualify you. If the judge recommended it and probation recommended it, there's a very good chance you're going to get accepted. So he would go from 46 to 34. So now we're at 2 years and 10 months. The last 6 months, and this actually is a little bit in flux. I now know it's up to the last year of a custodial sentence can be served in a halfway house. Now, historically, it's always been they give you 6 months in a halfway house. But I have now had more than one client told me that they're getting a 12-month to halfway house release date. And I know one January 6th defendant who already got out 12 months before the end of his sentence to a halfway house. So, but let's say that it's the more typical 6 months. So where were we at? We're at 34 months. So now he's down to 28 months of actual time. So we're at 2 years, 4 months of actual time in custody before you get released to a halfway house. And then what Jake will tell you is that you're supposed to do 6 months in a halfway house, but your actual first release date is that this is a COVID issue. The first release date from the halfway house is after 60 days. If you make a successful transition from a BOP facility back into the community, within 60 days, you can get released from the halfway house to go home. Now, what's happening now is, the halfway house is very useful for somebody who does like 10 years in prison or 15 years in prison. And then they need that transitional step. They need to have a place to live. They need to be able to look for a job. They need to be able to open a bank account. They need to do all those things to sort of reintegrate into society. And it's easier for them to do that without stress living in a transitional facility. So, but somebody like Jake, where you've got an address to go to, you've got a home, a spouse, a parent. You don't need to be in a transitional facility because you have your own place to go live. You can get out even short of the 60 days. How many nights did you sleep at a halfway house, Jake?
I was in the halfway house for like a week, and because the media kept hounding me and the residents, the people in the halfway house were like, "Let's get this guy out of here. Let's send him to home confinement." They put an ankle monitor on me, and then I was in home confinement for like the last 7 weeks or something like that, or maybe a little longer, a little shorter for my
So
sentence.
you got out 6 months ahead of the end of your sentence to go to halfway house. You were initially told you would be eligible to leave the halfway house after 60 days, and in fact, you spent 6 nights.
Yeah, I actually got out a year early because of FSA. And what you're saying is true. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that are getting 12 months of halfway house time. As long as they complete the RDAP program, they can get a year of halfway house and they can get a year off of their
So that's
sentence.
2 years you don't spend in a BOP facility against your whatever number the judge gives. So if Bigo got 54, there's a good chance Bigo does less than 20 actually in custody. I've got a client who got 54. He was just sentenced last March. He went into custody in July. He's already got a 2025 release date. So,
That's not bad. It's not bad numbers. Not that anybody wants to spend any time,
yeah,
but
exactly. But
I mean,
and part of the job of the defense lawyer is to do what's doable, not to try to do the impossible. So
y- no, Ship. I follow what you're saying. But I've been I'm not a lawyer, but I'm surrounded by them, and I've been listening to them for a long time. I think that that's appropriate and good defense work is it's not the movies, like not everybody is doing these massive massive efforts and getting this sort of OJ job. I think you have to be real with it, and I think venue. I think when I was in DC watching Big O's trial, we analyzed it almost nightly, and I saw his team of attorneys. I did the rarest thing ever, which is a journalist accompanied his legal team and hung out with them and saw all the intricacies and all their strategy even. And I saw that jury and I said, this is the best case scenario I could see in a case in a defense team in and a jury, and he still got guilty on everything, including the theft of the envelope. So
and how long did it take them?
not long at
Yeah,
all. It's super fast. In fact, I had to do 105 miles an hour down to DC just because that's how quick the verdict came in. And Crypto was on a plane. He actually boarded the plane and then got off because that's how quick the verdict came out. I said don't come. It's already over. Wild, fast time. And I actually asked that in sort of their little presser that McBride had outside. Is I asked him and I put it up top of the nest. Okay, guys, if you ever want to see it. And I said you had all the best case, a great team, a pretty solid case. There's nothing really questionable about it. Everyone knows what happened. There's no dispute there. And then you picked the most diverse jury I've ever seen, and they seemed attentive. And then the prosecutors made plenty of errors. I saw it, including the AUSA when he zapped the zap and hike and strike taser in there accidentally. I mean, just crazy errors, and he was still guilty on everything. It was just that for me was pretty telling.
Well, if I may, I was listening to a space where Enrique Tario was talking, and they were talking about how he was saying that the prosecutors said to him in their interrogation that if they were doing these cases anywhere else in the country, they'd be laughed out of court. But because they're being done in DC, then they're likely to get a conviction. And I also heard that the jury pool was very, very small. And they were, in some cases, even recycling jury members from previous trials into some of these J6 trials that had taken place. And the fact that Big O went to trial and all he got was 4.5 years or so, that's actually, he lucked out. Sometimes they'll throw the book at you.
Yeah, I think the judge. I mean, I even went there for the sentencing hearing and everything, and The government wanted substantially more time. I don't remember off the top of my head, but they wanted more time, as you can imagine, and even the judge, this is my sort of observation. He seemed annoyed. He seemed annoyed by it, and he was serious about the 4.5, but Jake, you're right. They sought substantially more. Ship, do you at all remember that? I know you've been involved in so many cases, so
No,
I
I,
I don't
I
expect
sat
you
in
to.
and watched Vigo's case for about 30 minutes one day. I was in trial.
Yeah.
I was in my marathon 15 weeks of trials in the two Oathkeeper cases. I mean, I met you there while those cases were going on, and I had an opportunity to just go over for during a. We might have had an off day or something, or we'd finished early in the day, and I watched a little bit. I know the prosecutor in that case. I've had him in a couple of the. I haven't actually tried a case with him, but I've had him in a couple of the cases. The guy out of Florida. Um, I didn't know Joe McBride. I mean, I met him. I actually got to know him after that trial a little bit. Um, so I obviously know Brad very well. Brad was in the Oathkeeper case. I've known Brad almost since I first started doing these. So yeah, the problem with these cases, as I've said more than once, is we're dealing with a juror pool that is simply going to accept as gospel whatever comes out of the mouth of the FBI witnesses. And, they look at the video, and it doesn't matter how many alternative rationales you can give them or alternative points of view you can give them about what's reflected on the videos. They are simply adopting what the government says. And there, it's just there's no, they ignore or willing to overlook every gap in the government's evidence. They're willing to accept every inference suggested to them by the prosecution. That's why they come back with verdicts so quickly. There's no debate in the jury room. There's no dissenting views. Well, I take that back. So when in the third Oathkeeper trial, when I got Michael Green acquitted of all the felonies, and he was found guilty on one misdemeanor, they were out for 5 days. And we learned when the juror who used to work for C-SPAN did her 90-minute interview with Brian Lamb on C-SPAN, we learned from her that her and one other juror had spent 4 days trying to convince the other 10 that Michael Green was guilty of one felony. They kept that jury out for 4 days because they were adamant that he should be convicted of at least one felony and not just a misdemeanor. And so that was the only debate. That was the debate to avoid. They refused to. Think about it. Didn't get him acquitted on all the felonies. He was acquitted on 3 of the felonies, and on the 4th one, the jury was hung 10-2 for acquittal. These 2 jurors were holdouts on the acquittal, insisting that he should be convicted of at least one felony. That's the nature of the debate. Once they go back into the jury room in every other case, there's no debate among the jurors. They are all like-minded. And that is, somebody did the math the other day. 99.75% of all trials have been, guilty verdicts, because there's only been 2 defendants out of 400 who have gone to trial. Or no, I guess it's 2 defendants, two out of all the cases, not just the trials, but 2 out of all the cases have been found not guilty, and that was the gentleman early on. His last name escapes me. I think his first and last name start with an M. But he was in a bench trial with Judge McFadden, and Judge McFadden acquitted him on all 4 misdemeanors. He was only charged with the 4 misdemeanors. Judge McFadden acquitted him based upon his own testimony, which Judge McFadden said was a close call, but his testimony was such that Judge McFadden found reasonable doubt that the government had not proven the case beyond a reasonable doubt in light of the defendant's testimony that was uncontradicted. So that was one. The only other defendant to be acquitted was Judge Maida It was an oath keeper in an effectively the fourth oath keeper trial. There were only two defendants left at that time. Judge Maida had heard three complete trials involving the oath keepers. A lot of the same facts presented each time, same witnesses, same testimony, same physical evidence. He knew all of the government's case start to finish. The government presented the case against James Beeks in a stipulated trial, where basically they said to Judge Maida, our evidence for Mr. Beeks would be the same in all these other trials. And then they let Beeks argue for his innocence. Beeks represented himself, didn't have a lawyer. And Judge Maida looked at the government and said, you've only charged him with conspiracy. There's no evidence that he agreed with anyone else. And Judge Maida acquitted him. He acquitted him because the government's case sucked. He basically said, you charged him with conspiracy, but you have no evidence of agreement between him and anybody else. He was just there at the same time, and that's not enough. And he acquitted him. Those are the only two cases that have been acquitted in 2 years of trials.
Yeah, Ship. I guess what you're talking about with the juries like having this sort of default that the government must be right and always right. I'm just baffled that they look at the case, that they're looking at these cases or these circumstances, and it's always in the government's best possible light and in the defense's worst. I watched it. It's weird to me. I call it. Let's see. I guess I would call it like default institutional correctness. Like automatically there's extra preponderance applied to the government because they're the government. That is wild to me. Jake, I see you reacting. You got something for that?
Oh no, I'm just agreeing with you 100%. And in DC, that's what you can expect. We're talking about a population that, from what I understand, voted 95% for Hillary Clinton and I think 90 something percent for Biden. And dude, when I was in the DC jail, I saw what these COs were watching, and I promise you, it was not anything conservative. It wasn't anything neutral. It was ABC, it was CNN, it was MSNBC. This is what they were watching. If they were watching local news, they were watching that national news. If they weren't watching that, they were watching America's Got Talent. They were watching just total garbage. And I'm not surprised to hear that that's the sentiment in DC. And like I said before, the prosecution told Enrique Tarrio that if they were trying him anywhere else, they'd be laughed out of court. But because it's in D.C., they were pretty much guaranteeing a conviction. And I also think it's very telling that Enrique Tarrio also said that the prosecution came to him shortly after his arrest with the plea deal that said that as long as he admitted that he had a middleman between himself and Trump and that Trump was a part of orchestrating January 6th and he testified about that in open court, then he would get out in a couple of months. If not, they were going to throw the book at him, and he got 22 years. And the government, from what I understand, has actually appealed that sentencing, and they want to give him double that. So this is kind of what we're dealing with. And maybe Bill can weigh in on this notion, being a federal prosecutor. But, you know, the way that the federal system is set up, they have a 98% guilty plea rate because of the way that they weigh on people with all of the resources of the government. They charge them with stuff up the wazoo, and then they throw a big number of years that they're looking at prison, and they say, well, if you just plead guilty to this, then you'll get a much lesser sentence, and we'll get rid of these charges.
Well, I mean, that is the way the plea bargain process works. It is coercive. It is intended to produce a result that avoids the cost and expense and consumption of resources that comes with a trial. And some defendants. I mean, I just pled a guilt. I pled a defendant guilty in Hawaii, so we're not a J6 case. We're not in D.C. But the government had charged him a RICO conspiracy, and he was exposed to a potential 20-year sentence. And we reached a plea agreement on a single drug count, and he's basically getting time served. He's set in jail for 3 years waiting for this trial to start next week. The trial is set to start for other defendants. He's now out. And the case was going to take 6 months in trial. And got to the point where I was able to negotiate a deal for him that, in effect, was a 3-year sentence, and he's already been in jail 3 years waiting for trial. So it's like, how can you say no? Um, but in a real way, they did wring that plea out of him by forcing him to sit in jail while the case took forever to get to trial. On the subject of the jury pool, that is counterproductive to justice in a couple of different ways, more than a couple. But a defendant doesn't feel like they get a fair trial in that environment. I mean, if every defendant, and this is an issue that I'm going to raise on appeal when we deal with a change of venue question, finally, when we do get it before the appellate court, it's like, at what point does the judiciary begin to scratch their heads over whether or not there is a fair trial to be had? Is it 100% conviction rate of 50 people, a 99% conviction rate of 150 people, a 98.9% conviction rate of 500 people? At what point is it so automatic that you could draw the conclusion that there's probably not actual juror deliberation of the evidence going on? And the problem is, because these cases are so charged politically, you have, as Jake pointed out, a population that voted 92% in favor of Joe Biden and 5% for Donald Trump. So when a defendant is in court because the defendant was part of an effort to contest the outcome of that election, where 92% of the jurors got what they want, they got Joe Biden, and their attitude about any controversy surrounding the outcome of the 2020 election is, what do you mean controversy? Joe Biden won. He got 8 million more votes nationwide. Donald Trump was just talking nonsense about, the election irregularities. That was all, 92 lawsuits were filed and he lost all of them, or whatever the statistic is. So, coming to Capitol Hill on January 6th and protesting was just idiotic, because the whole world knows he lost. Only he thought he won. That's the attitude that comes with a juror pool that voted 92% for the guy on the other side of the political equation than the protesters. So you begin with a juror pool that just is convinced that your point of view as a matter of politics is wrong. Not only is it wrong, it's manifested in Orange Van Bat. So,
well, and Bill, I have a question for you about that, because from what I understand, the jury pool is supposed to be non-biased. They're supposed to have no idea about the case. They're supposed to have no opinion, political or whatever, about the evidence. And that's how you're supposed to get a fair trial. But because of the saturation in the Mockingbird media of this case, of this situation, the amount of vitriol, the amount of propaganda that was out there, the news stations these people are likely watching. I mean, everybody around the world heard about J6. So in that sense, wouldn't that also be something to say in court? Like, hey, we got a jury pool here that voted 92% for Biden, and the media was relentless in its insurrection narrative. How can we actually get a fair trial in a place like that?
well, okay, a couple of things. It is not exactly accurate to say you're supposed to have jurors with no opinions. There's fact Supreme Court cases that have said, look, that's not a realistic expectation. And in fact, you don't want, somebody, if you were to bring jurors into the courtroom in D.C. that said they know nothing about January 6th and they have no opinion, you've got jurors with their head in the sand, because that's just not it's like, how do you live here and have no knowledge of it? that is a juror that's just willfully ignorant of the world around them, and that's not necessarily a good juror.
Yeah, the standard is just can you put it
That's
aside and can you
okay. Now
judge the facts as
that's the
presented?
point. That's the point I wanted to make, and I have raised this issue with judges here, and I actually made the same problem. I made the same argument to the judge in the RICO case, which is this huge organized crime case in Hawaii that everybody's heard of. And I said, Your Honor, I've said to judges here, we engage in a legal fiction. And that legal fiction is when a prospective juror says to you, yes, I have opinions. Yes, I've heard about it. But I can put that all aside and judge the case based on the facts as presented. They're not telling the truth. It's not human nature. You can't divorce yourself from what you know and say, I'm going to ignore everything I already know, and I'm only going to make a decision based upon what I hear in this courtroom. Now, they say it because it's what they understand the judge wants them to say. The judge wants them to say, I can be fair. And those are like magic words. Once they say it, the defense has got no way around it. And what I have said to judges, I said, if a juror really wants to sit on a J6 case, and if that juror really wants to be the avenging angel for the community and convict that defendant before he's heard a word of evidence, that juror knows how to answer your questions, meaning the judge, to maximize his chances of getting on the jury. Undisclosed bias that's hidden, is by definition bias that the defense can't use to disqualify the juror. But it's still there. It's still there. And I said, the unfairness of having these trials in D.C. is reflected by the fact that the government would jump up and down and yell and scream if I got this case moved to West Virginia 70 miles away. 70 miles. How much geography is 70 miles? Not much. But in West Virginia, 77% of the voters voted for Donald Trump. Why can't we go have a trial there? Would that be unfair to the government?
Or but then think about this. Is it unfair for the defense to be in the jury pool of 92% for
That's my
Biden?
point.
And that's
That's my
the
point.
hypocrisy. The old the saying goes, if the left didn't have double standards, they'd have no standards at all. And I think that can be applied to the government.
Well, I argued in writing before I started doing J6 cases. I wrote a long story about the jury issue in Human Events magazine and online. You can find it if you look for it. And I argued the government should have no interest in where a trial takes place. Any 12 jurors anywhere should be equally acceptable to the government, should not matter. The government's case rises and falls on its evidence, not on where it chooses to have the trial. So I said that.
Well, and speaking to that, Bill, I don't mean to interrupt, but I've actually talked to people about this, one of whom is sitting in the audience, God love her, and the point was brought up of like, hold on a second. We're literally saying that where we do a trial is going to dictate the outcome. That's not how the justice system is supposed to work at
You're
all.
absolutely
Like you
100%
said.
correct. That's a bullseye. That was the point of my article, which it should not matter to the United States Department of Justice where the 12 jurors come from. Why is the United States Department of Justice so adamant in opposing transfers of venue away from the District of Columbia? Because they know they can't lose cases here, and that becomes highly problematic and divisive within society when the defendants realize they can't get a fair trial here, and it allows the government. This is the biggest thing. It allows the government to dictate the terms of any change of plea. Because if you want to try to negotiate the terms on the change of plea, the government looks at you and says, let's go to trial.
Right. And I just want to say sorry, Mark, but
No, go ahead.
I want to say this. Sun Tzu, Art of War, never fight a battle you know you cannot win. And I knew sitting in that cell for as long as I was that if they can rig an election, they can rig a jury, they can rig a courtroom, especially in DC. And I knew, and the Judge Lambert said as much at my sentence. He said, "You probably did the right thing pleading guilty because if you went to trial, you were looking at 20 years." Now, with that said, just recently, Ray Epps finally got his, charge in misdemeanor. They're talking about, oh, well, he tried to de-escalate, blah, 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 blah. And they're trying to give him, government is literally arguing to give him less time. And if you look at the video footage of the 30 seconds of my entering the Capitol, I stopped somebody from stealing. I volunteered to help the police. That's why I was being escorted into the Senate chamber. That's why we were walking from locked door to locked door. And when we were outside the building, I stopped everybody from breaking in and told people to go home. But so if that's not trying to de-escalate, I don't know what is. But because the media made me the face and they associated my image with what happened outside the building, any idea of me trying to help or de-escalate was antithetical to their narrative and the government's narrative that I was somehow horned man bad, horned man crazy.
Well, Jake, you and I talked about that outfit you wore, and you explained to me, and I'll just explain to the audience for people who haven't heard, Jake has done some acting in his background. He understood how to get attention. You
Well,
and
I no, hold on, Bill. I've never done any acting. I've never done. I had an acting profile, never done
okay,
acting. But I have practiced shamanism for literally over 10 years, and that get up, that regalia, is a part of that shamanic tradition, and it is, yes, supposed to get people's attention. It is supposed to shock the cognitive
yeah,
system, and it
and so
works.
that's why you wore what you wore. But that's what drew not just people's attention, but unfortunately, it drew cameras to you, and you became the iconic image.
Fun fact too, Jake. Do you remember Shipley? The first space Jake did after release. He did a couple of other appearances before ours, but we were the first space, and we were really proud and happy to have him. And I remember I asked you, Jake. I said, "Are you ever gonna wear it again?" Now I know times have changed, but at the time, he just been released, and he. Do you remember your answer, Jake?
I don't
It's
recall.
okay. It's okay. But you were fresh out, and you're like, I don't think so. I don't think, and then of course I seen you at some events wearing it, and I just had to laugh. I think it's
Well,
funny.
it's
Yeah.
because at the time the government still had not, and they still haven't given me my headdress. They still haven't given me my phone. They haven't given
Really?
me my staff. Oh yeah, dude, they haven't given us anything, and we have asked. They were supposed to return it over a year ago, and they still
Really?
haven't. And then their excuse was, while Bill put the motion in the courts, their excuse was, oh, well, we're going to wait until the motion is done and then we'll give it back. Then the motion is dismissed and they still haven't given it back. Bill has reached out over and over again. They're jerking us around. So I just, part of the reason why I said I don't know was because I didn't have it. And so I was kind enough to receive the parts to make another one, and I made another one.
Yeah. It's completely cool. Things
Eh,
change, and I guess if you didn't have the equipment, that makes sense too. But I just laughed at it. Go ahead,
Now
Shipley.
I want to mention Ryan Zink down in the audience, text or DM me that the defendant who was acquitted, his name, hell, I already forgot it, Ryan, was Matthew Martin. So I had it right, Matthew Martin. Thanks for sending that in, Ryan. You know, so we can. I want to just mention briefly. I don't want to get too detailed into the legalities of it because it is a little bit of a little legalese and lawyerisms, but the Fisher case that the Supreme Court has agreed to hear on the use of the Section 1512 statute for corruptly obstructing Congress, which is of great interest to Jake because it's the only felony he was charged with, and it was the county he was made to plead guilty to, and so the outcome of that case, I mean, can't make the world spin backwards. We can't get Jake his time back, but it could dramatically change his criminal history status if that is, reversed, and we have an opening to get his record expunged. Um,
Let me ask you this real quick on that, Shipley, because I thank you, because you're going right through my notes here. Is when is that case being argued, or what can we expect with that case without me jumping on SCOTUS' website and looking
okay,
at it?
well,
Do you know?
okay, so it's the way the Supreme Court manages their docket. It can be a little bit tricky. Um, they accepted it in December. That generally means there's enough time for the case to be considered this term. So what happens after they accept a case? They have a briefing schedule, and then because the cert petition is just, "Dear Supreme Court, will you hear my case?" And they either say yes or no. They accept cert, they deny cert. Well, they agreed to accept cert. Now they will set a briefing schedule, and the defendant in this case, his opening brief will be due by a certain date, probably early to mid March. The government brief will then be due, 2 to 3 weeks later. I'm not exactly sure what the spacing between the briefs is. So let's say it's early April. Um, the last week for oral arguments is the last week of April. So there's a limited amount of time between when that last brief will come in and the last possible day to conduct the oral argument. And then the Supreme Court spends basically all of May and June finishing up all of its unfinished opinions. And so, the opinions for this term are all issued before the end of June. The last week of June, I think, is when the last week of issuing opinions. So there's always the possibility that a case that the court takes doesn't make it onto the docket before the end of the year, or the end of the term, which is in June. In which case they'll roll it over until the beginning of the next term, which starts the first week of October. So this case is sort of in that time span where it should get done this term, but it's not necessarily guaranteed to get done this term.
Do you have any? I'm sorry, Ship. Do you have any intent, desire, or to join in that at all?
Well, the case that was taken up is United States versus Fisher. There were 3 cases pending raising the same issue. Another one was Jake Lang's case, United States versus Lang, filed by his attorneys, United States versus Fisher, and I can't remember the third one. All 3 were pending with cert petitions before the court. The court only took up the Fisher case. It did not take up Jake Lang's case. Jake Lang's cert petition was amateurish and idiotic. It was one of the worst things I've ever read. None of the defense lawyers that I know wanted the court to take Jake Lang's case. The Fisher case was very well written, and it has very good facts. This is the thing about appellate work. You want the case on appeal to have good facts. You want the court to be tempted to say, the facts of the defendant are so favorable here, it's hard for us to say no. When the facts are terrible, it's easy for the court to say no. It's easy to make that legal decision to not benefit a guy whose facts are terrible. Mark, do you know the image of Jake Lang?
No, not
Jake,
specifically.
do you know the image of Jake Lang?
Only because I've kept myself abreast of J6 stuff, but I've just
Let me look it
seen
up
in
real quick.
spaces. Yeah, I've seen a picture, I think, but no, not
Yeah, well,
really.
he's got a mask on his face. He's got a friggin' metal baseball bat in his hand. And he's got
Okay,
a
I got you.
Capitol Police
Yeah,
shield.
yeah,
You
yeah, yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah. He's fighting in the tunnel with
with a
yeah
with a baseball bat.
with a metal baseball
Yeah.
bat
Okay. Yeah.
and a gas mask on, leather jacket. He looks like what's that guy from The Walking Dead that was pummeling everyone with his bat? It's
Negan.
got a
Negan.
Negan. Yeah, it's got a soft Negan look, but yeah,
Well,
sorry, Mister
so
Lang,
so I
but
don't know all the facts of Jake Lang's case. I've got a whole different set of beasts with Jake Lang, which we don't need to discuss. I don't know the facts of his case, but man, from the perspective of all the different defendants, that's not the poster child you want in the Supreme Court saying, I didn't do anything wrong. Makes it,
Yeah, optics are
yeah,
everything.
yeah,
Optics
exactly.
are
The
everything.
Fisher case is much better. Joseph Fisher's facts are much better. Joseph Fisher's not wielding a baseball bat, battling with the police outside the tunnel. Uh, so they took up the Fisher case. The biggest reason for taking the Fisher case is it was written by the Federal Defender's Office in the Middle District of Pennsylvania, and they have a gentleman named Jeffrey Green on the case. Jeffrey Green is the director of the Supreme Court Clinic at Northwestern University Law School. He has argued before the Supreme Court numerous times. He's the kind of advocate the Supreme Court wants to hear from. He's a known quantity. The brief's very well written, the argument is very well laid out, and Jeffrey Green is a very good oral advocate. And we've got
Well, really quick, if I may, Bill, I have a question for you. If you've read the argument and the paperwork, can you kind of explain in brief what exactly the case they're trying to make is and why you think the Supreme Court heard it?
Sure. Okay, so section 1512C, as a general proposition, as with most of the section 1500 statutes that deal with obstruction of justice as a general proposition, 1512C typically deals with the interference with the presentation of evidence. Destruction of evidence, dissuading a witness, bribing a witness, deleting electronic data, all that kind of stuff is all set up, is all part of 1512. And 1512C2 specifically is the spoliation of evidence, the destruction of records, papers, other kinds of physical items so that they're not available for an adjudicatory proceeding. Now, that is the statute talks about corruptly interfering with an official proceeding. So then the question is, what's an official proceeding? There's a definitional section of the statute that says official proceeding includes proceedings before Congress. All right, well then, is that all proceedings before Congress or some kind of quasi-judicial proceedings before Congress, where they're in a hearing and hearing witness testimony or considering documentation as part of their legislative function, whereas the Electoral Vote Act is more ceremonial. They're not hearing any evidence. There's no manipulation of evidence or destruction of evidence involved. So when the statute talks about interfering with the availability of evidence or witnesses in an official proceeding, is that statute really applicable to an event that simply stops Congress from moving forward? There was no evidence interfered with. The proceeding just had to be halted for security reasons until the building could be cleared. So a little bit is, grammatical interpretation of the words of the statute, because there is what's called a residual clause, where the first part of the statute talks about destroying, mutilating, whatever. There's like 6 verbs, and they all relate to the destruction of some kind of evidence. And then the second part of the statute, what's called, it's a residual clause, and it says, or otherwise obstructing an official proceeding. The question is, what does otherwise mean? The government has taken the position, and 14 of the 15 judges have agreed with the government, that otherwise essentially just throws open the gate to anything that interferes with the official proceeding. Judge,
Now, I have a question for you about that. That is considered what is called statutory construction, right?
correct.
Where the government can write the statute, however, and then that kind of leaves it, if it's written in a vague way, that leaves it to the government to interpret the statute as they see fit.
Yes and no. I mean, well, yes, DOJ can interpret it however they see fit and then run wild with their prosecutions. But it's up to the court to say, well, that's not really what the statute means. You are aggressively stretching the meaning of the words.
You see that more than in anything else in the technical world of guns with the ATF and force reset triggers and all the above. You see it all the time. They make the rules, that the laws leave some vagueness. The department makes some rules, they start enforcing it, and it's got to work its way through the
Right.
court.
And what is interesting, and I'm going to credit Andy McCarthy for this observation because he's the first one I heard. I know he has mixed reputation among the J6 community and pro-Trump crowds. Everything he's an anti-Trumper. But Andy McCarthy made an observation that I then looked up and I found out he's absolutely right. And that is the last three times the Supreme Court has taken up obstruction of justice issues under the Section 1500 statutes, all three times it has taken up issues where the government has expansively interpreted the obstruction of justice statutes sort of beyond their normal textual meaning to sweep in as much conduct as they could. The most famous of which is the Arthur Anderson case out of Enron, where Andrew Weissman made a non-crime a crime by his interpretation. The last three cases, the Supreme Court has reversed the Department of Justice all three times. It basically said you have stretched this statute beyond its legitimate meaning in order to sweep in more conduct. Three times that issue has gone up. Three different statutes, all obstruction of justice. Three times the Supreme Court has reversed and sent it back. The 1512, the use of 1512, as the government admits, it's never been used like this before. This is a novel application. They've never tried to make it cover essentially a riot like they have here. Um, the fact that they took it up on the first instance they could, the first case that got to them, they took it, suggests to me that this is going to be four in a row. Once again, they're going to tell the Department of Justice, you have stretched the meaning of this statute beyond reason. It does not, it deals with spoliation of evidence or preventing witnesses from testifying. It does not deal with just stopping a congressional proceeding.
Now, with that said, Bill, I have a question about that because kind of like what Mark was saying about the way that like the ATF or the DOJ or the FBI or whatever will take these statutes and then interpret them how they want. That is how they the interpretation of the statute or the creation of a regulation to create policy is essentially what is dictating whether or not they take up things or how they mirror or how they choose to frame things. But the Supreme Court and the court system is there to be the checks and balances against the misuse of executive power in that way. Is that correct?
Absolutely, exactly right. And what happened here is at the district court level, 14 judges said, nope, we agree the government can do this. We think it's a reasonable application of the language of the statute. A 15th judge, Judge Nichols, said, I don't agree. This is stretching the statute beyond its textual meaning, and this is the allegations of the indictment don't fit the elements of the offense as set forth in the statute, so he threw it out. It went up to that decision went up to the appeals court in the Fisher case, and the appeals court in a 2-1 decision where none of the three judges agreed with each other. They were 2-1 on the outcome, but the two that voted the same way had different reasons for doing so. So you had three judges, three opinions that made no sense. It was a complete mess. And so in some ways the Supreme Court had to take it just to sort out the mess. But I think, the nature of the case is such that it fits right into the and it fits into the mindset that the court has already tried to impress the Department of Government that this is not your sandbox to simply, move the sand around in piles the way you want, and that's what they're doing. Um, and it's not. It's not. If you think about it in this context, what is the nature of the charge? The nature of the charge is obstruction of justice. Who's the victim most of the time in obstruction of justice? Justice. It's the Department of Justice. They're the ones that get victimized by making their cases more difficult to investigate or bring because people take the opportunity to destroy documents or bribe witnesses or intimidate witnesses or do things that make it more difficult to have the Department of Justice be able to do its work. So, because they are in effect the victim of the very crime they're prosecuting, having that crime be applied as expansively as possible makes their job easier.
Now, how does that affect, if anything? Because I've heard that this might affect the whole Trump thing and the charges in Georgia and all that stuff. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, 2 of the 4 charges in Trump are based on the same statute. You were charged with violation of 1512. President Trump's charged with aiding and abetting a violation of 1512. He's charged, in effect, with aiding and abetting you and everybody
Glad he
else.
helped you out, Jake. Can you believe
Yeah,
it?
and then he's also
How do you feel?
charged with conspiracy to violate 1512. So 2 of the 4 counts against him are tied to the statute that the court is going to review. The other 2 counts against him are, in some ways, even bigger stretches of existing case law. I don't want to get too much in the weeds on those, but one's a Voting Rights Act statute, dating back to the Ku Klux Klan, and the fourth one is conspiracy to defraud the government. Both of those cases have both of those counts have significant legal issues that have not yet been litigated in the district court. So yeah, and in fact, I listened to a podcast earlier today of Andy McCarthy again and he said something that I'd written 2 weeks ago. I wrote in my Substack column 2 weeks ago that, the Supreme Court had in effect blocked the Trump case by taking Fisher without leaving its fingerprints on the Trump case. Because that case can't go to trial. When 2 of the 4 counts have to do with 1512, that case can't go to trial while the 1512 count is being reviewed by the Supreme Court.
Chip, hold on. Hold that thought. Do you mean that, like, practically, or you mean that, like, legally, literally, it can't move forward?
Practically.
Okay.
However,
right. Like, it shouldn't move forward. It's like embarrassing.
Exactly. And I think if the judge was to attempt, nevertheless, to drive that case to trial, Trump's team would probably seek a stay from the Supreme Court and get it. They do not want to issue a stay if they don't have to. They would prefer that the judge simply say, as some of the judges are saying in other contexts, that we'll wait for the Supreme Court's decision. That's what they clearly want, because they took Fisher the same day they turned down Jack Smith's expedited appeal. So it's like, we're not going to give the expedited appeal, but oh, by the way, we're going to hear the Fisher case, hint, hint, wink, wink, nod, nod. So I think if the judge tried to, in defiance of the hint that the Supreme Court is clearly sending, and attempted to drive the case to trial anyway, one of the judges would step in and say, no, you can't do that, not until we take a look at it.
Yeah, let me just let's do this real quick, guys. We've been going for an hour, so retweet the space, okay? A couple things up top in the nest. Chip, let me just mute you. So let me see real quick. So just because that's sounds messed me up. I didn't even know that about myself until I started doing this. So a couple things up top in the nest. Let me see here. I'm all messed up. Let me go here. Okay, first is the Scrotum t-shirts. If you want to support me and Crypto's work, this is Two Feds work. We would love you to buy a Scrotum the Cat t-shirt. It's up there. Next over is that I talked about when Big O's team when Big O lost and he was found guilty. I filmed the little presser out there outside the courthouse, and that's up top in the nest as well, just to give you a little flashback and you hear the situation, which is what we already discussed: the DC jury, the venue, and the likes of it. The challenge of it being J6, it's right there. And then the third thing I have here from Jacob is also the Give Send Go. It's the J6 Legal Defense Fund. It involves Shipley and his work because a lot of these lives have been derailed and the income is not there. So if this is something that touches you, and if it's something that you have the means or the want or the desire to help, that's your option up there. So t-shirts, some J6, and a little bit of history for you, all up there in the nest. And then let me say this, Ship and Jake, what we've covered so far: BOP math, sentencing, DC jury and venue, even SCOTUS. From my notes from your guys' openings, it would be the government change in tactics, Shipley. That's still on the table. And I have something which is when Jake mentioned, the anniversary is coming up. I am hearing the word insurrection be used less and less. I don't know if it just grew old. I know Jake's, a little frustrated that not all the footage is out, but has the footage made an impact? Is that I word, the dirty I word, going down? It doesn't have the same ring, uh, and yet they're still locking people up. So I guess my question is sort of socially, politically, what's going on with the insurrection? What's going on with J6 this year, election year? And then, of course, you can hit tactics as well. So I think, unless there's anything else you guys want to hit, I think I'm just trying to help guide us here, Shipley. Just unmute for me, Ship.
Yeah, among those subjects, you went past one that I wanted to briefly touch on.
Yeah, do it.
But
Do it.
but but something I wanted to, well, I forgot what it was. I'm 62,
Well,
so
it's going to be hard to do it then.
why don't you
If you
go through
forgot.
go through again, go through your notes again one more time, and I'll jump on it
Okay,
when you get to it.
I think you might want to do the government changing tactics.
Well,
Is that what you?
okay, yes, on that, and one other side note. You know,
Okay.
uh, as it was whispered in my ear at one point, um, the government seemed to pause in its aggressive arresting and charging. It seemed like in about April. And, because I was anticipating as I rolled out of the two back to back Oath Keeper trials, I was anticipating, picking up, a few new clients and kind of keeping the work going. And it seemed like, well, there don't seem to be a lot of new clients or don't seem to be a lot of cases being filed as aggressively as there were, in the first 18 months or so. And then it was whispered in my ear that the court had communicated to the Department of Justice that they needed to stop because the system was saturated. It's not like they hired new judges when the government went on its indictment spree. It's not like the judges hired a bunch of new staff over at the courthouse. In fact, the probation officer is so backed up right now, probation office is so backed up right now, rather than 12 weeks, which is typical between a guilty plea or guilty verdict and a sentencing, it's now stretched out to 16 and 18 weeks. That's just how backed up they are. So it was whispered in my ear that the court had communicated to the Department of Justice they needed to stop, allow some of the cases to work themselves through the system, either for there to be trials, because remember, there were no trials for 14 months. The first trial of a J6 case was in April of 2022. So 14 months after the event, or March or April 2022, 14 months after the event. But then there was, once the trial started, which effectively started after the government had made the representation that it was done with all the discovery, that all the video was available, Um, and all the interview materials, the documentary discovery had been sent out, the pace of trials picked up. Cases that had been waiting were then set for trial. Many defendants pled guilty. Some trials took place, but the effect of it was that the the uh, the the overwhelming crush of new cases was able to be reduced and alleviated some by cases just becoming complete. Jake was the first defendant to plead guilty. Well, actually, the second defendant to plead guilty and be sentenced. The first one had a really extenuating circumstances. But so Jake's sentencing was in November of 2021, and that was only the second sentence. So here we are, basically 2 years later, and several hundred cases have now been resolved. And about 3 months ago, as I mentioned earlier, starting in September, I noticed the pace of new indictments and new arrests began to pick up, and has been pretty consistent, 6, 8, 10 a week going back. And we had heard, there was a rumor among the defense lawyer community that the government said they had another 1,000 people in the pipeline. And I have now had a handful of cases where it looked like all of the investigation was complete by the summer of 2021, but then the defendant wasn't arrested and charged until 2023, which seems to coincide with what I was told, which was that the court told DOJ to pause, and they did pause for about 6 months, and then they started up again. So I expect that this is going to continue. Like I said, in court today, it came out that 2 Proud Boys, and these Proud Boys, I don't know, Jake may have shook their hand because they went through the Senate wing doors about the same time Jake did. They were among the first 50 people to go through the Senate wing doors. And they got arrested this morning. Don't ask me why it was, 36 months after Jake got arrested, when they in effect did the same thing. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I guess, maybe if they had worn an outfit like Jake's, they would have been picked up sooner. It's the numbers are going up again. They're,
How about inside court? It seems like they have a massive home field advantage. Okay, it seems like they have a massive win streak. So I don't expect too much to change inside the courtroom, but are you seeing anything?
No, I mean the outcome of the cases. I just tried.
Well, no, that we know that. I just, I guess I'm saying I guess I'm speaking tactics. I think it's odd that this is unprecedented. They're still grabbing new people, but I mean, maybe even with sentence, anything that they're changing, maybe they're not, because they're just getting everybody for everything, and everybody's guilty
Well,
essentially.
I will say now some of this is a concept of low hanging fruit, in the sense that the earlier cases were some of the easier cases in terms of clear video evidence. No mistaking the person involved, Jake Chansley. That made the cases easier to put together, easier to identify the defendant, easier to get an arrest, easier to push it through the court system. The cases that are coming up now, the IDs might be a little bit harder. There may be a lack of social media in the cases coming up now. You don't know until you see the discovery and you see what they were able to track down in terms of social media for an individual defendant. The absence of a lot of social media makes the cases more problematic. It makes it harder for the government to prove or to allege that the defendant came to DC on January 6th for the purpose of, or with the intention to interfere with the proceedings before Congress. While on the one hand, the defense argument always is, well, that's First Amendment free speech activity. The government's response, which the court tends to agree with, is, well, yes, until you marry it with conduct. If it's just, yelling it out a megaphone, that's First Amendment. But when you yell out a megaphone and you go into the building, you are in effect using the First Amendment activity to establish the intention to commit a crime. And then the crime is proved through the conduct. So it might be that what we are seeing now are cases where the absence of social media makes it more difficult for the government to prove the state of mind. Um, so that is a little bit, I think, a little bit different in the cases that are coming up now, and I think that's being played out to some degree in what I see as much less reliance in the charging decisions on the 1512 count. Now, that might be that, with Fisher, they're hedging their bets and thinking, the Supreme Court throws this out, we'd be better off if we didn't even have it in the case. We're just going to charge cases without 1512, without the obstruction count. And they are using much more often the 231 count. Now, I use all these numbers like everybody knows what they mean, but I agree. I mean, I understand that I know what they mean. 231.
What is the 231?
231 is the civil disorder count, which is about I mean, I didn't even know it existed until these cases, but it's in effect
That's just a federal loud noise
Yeah,
complaint. It's just being rowdy.
it's a federal participation. You're participating in a riot and not going home when the police tell you to. That's a 231 count. The
Gotcha.
civil disorder. They have to prove that there was a riot, that you were present, and that you disregarded police instructions to depart.
I have a question about that, Bill. So I was charged with that along with the 1512. And then they had me plead guilty. They gave me the plea deal for the 1512 and they dropped that other one. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, that the Supreme Court decides to say this 1512 is not applicable. Would the government then try to come at me with that charge and say, well, we're going to get you on this instead?
I think once they dismiss the count and you had nothing to do with the Supreme Court throwing out the count, they're just screwed. They're stuck. They dismissed it. You did what the agreement obligated you to do, which was plead guilty to the 1512. They did what the plea agreement obligated them to do, which was to throw out or drop drop the others. You didn't do anything to upset the apple cart. The Supreme Court did. You're still entitled to the benefit of the bargain you made.
So does that mean that also the misdemeanors would be in a similar boat, or would they try to say, well, we're going to try to get you on that?
Similar outcome. Same justification. It's like,
So then it would basically be like, okay, well, you no longer have a felony. You can't get the 2.5 years of your life back, but you're not a felon anymore.
exactly.
Now, would that have to go through the court? Would that have to go through
if
Lamberth?
you had a good lawyer, he would explain that to you already.
Right. Well, we all know the quality of my previous counsel. Would that be something that would have to go through Judge Lamberth, or would that be something that happens retroactively?
So now this is a complicated question. It is not nearly as simple as one would think, and it's not really a remedies seminar on spaces that I expected to be teaching tonight. Typically, and I haven't looked at this question in a long time because it does not come up very often. It's very rare that the Supreme Court throws out a statute. But as I recall, the last time I had to go through this, the way it can work is the Supreme Court can itself say in its decision that this decision is retroactive to cases already final on appeal. And I think that's a possibility here, which means the Supreme Court itself says we find this statute to be invalid as applied, and that is for Mr. Fisher and all other similarly situated defendants. Normally, a Supreme Court decision is not retroactive to cases already final. So if a case is already final, a contrary Supreme Court decision is not retroactive unless the Supreme Court says so, in which case it's automatic, or cases go back for resentencing and a judicial determination is made, and it would probably have to be made ultimately by the DC Circuit, that it would be unconstitutional to not apply the case retroactively. I think both outcomes are likely. If the Supreme Court doesn't say itself that it's retroactive, I think the DC Circuit would ultimately say, yes, it is retroactive, because what the Supreme Court will be saying is that Jake Chansley was in effect convicted of a non-crime. The facts, as alleged by the government, do not reach the statute. It's not a crime. And under those circumstances, given that this is a novel application, first time by the government, it's not something that any court has ever sanctioned in the past, they in effect have to give everybody the escape hatch. You can't have some people suffer a felony conviction for a non-crime while other people are relieved of their felony obligation for non-crime. So, for example, I mean, I've got a couple of clients that have appeals pending where 1512 was one of the counts of conviction. Their appeals are pending, meaning their cases are not final. So the Supreme Court decision would automatically apply to them whether the Supreme Court says retroactive or not, because the Supreme Court's opinion applies to every case not yet final. All right, so how do you have a legal justification to cut that group in half and say, not final, you're all off the hook. Final, you're all still screwed? You can't. There's no justification for doing that in this circumstance.
That
Ship,
makes sense.
yeah, Ship, I'm gonna kind of pull away a little bit from the legal side. I'm gonna go to, of course, you, but Jake, I want to lead you in here with like I said, insurrection. I think that term is not as trending as it has been. I think it's peaked. That's my observation. I hope it's so. But this J6, it's election year. The next J6 will, after this one, will potentially be just before a president is either resworn or resworn,
Yeah.
right? So, I guess if I put it that way. So,
Unless it's Kamala.
oh, 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 that's true. Yeah. Thanks, Ship. Thanks for that image. So Jake, just just sort of, what do you have socially, politically with this year J6 insurrection? Is it trending? What can we expect?
Well, I think that the narrative of insurrection is losing its potency because more and more of the story is coming out. And as we continue to get more footage, God willing, the heart of Speaker Johnson is moved to give us more footage. And as the illegitimacy, in my opinion, of the J6 committee is becoming more and more apparent, I also think we are going to see a transition from people that believed the Mockingbird media to people that are continuously fed up with being lied to. And that, I think, also, comes into this, it bleeds into this notion that J6 is somehow being compared to 9/11, and the ridiculousness of that notion. It is absolutely ridiculous.
Do you
And
think it still has the same impact? Because
no,
okay,
not at all. Well, the thing is, and this is my opinion about the term insurrection, is that nobody had heard that term until the Mockingbird media said it over and over and over and over and over again. They wanted a novel word that nobody had heard of so that they could place it into the hearts and the minds of the populace and then use shocking images outside the Capitol and my shocking image inside the Capitol to push that narrative. And they didn't want to say revolution because in many cases that word has a connotation to it to rebellion against tyranny. And they didn't want to use that. So they used the term insurrection as a means of monopolizing the minds and the hearts of the American people. I also think that as you said yourself that the term is becoming less and less used. I also note the way that the Mockingbird media and the government have chosen to treat Ray Epps with kid gloves, and how even in the media they're starting to call it a riot, not an insurrection. It's showing that it's losing its potency because of the repetition. I also think that as individuals like myself were made the poster boy, and then Tucker Carlson aired that footage, it really turned the narrative on its head, because they tried to use my image to create this illusion. And then once that illusion was shattered and questions were really placed in the minds of the people, it really became quite apparent to anyone that was paying attention that it wasn't quite what the media or the government was saying it was, and that this is a very real political agenda unfolding before our hearts and minds. I also think that the economy and the state of the economy, and the fact that the administration that's currently in office said that the adults were back in the room, and this is what we get. We get gay sex inside of the Senate hearing chamber. We get cocaine in the White House. We get two wars, which we are dumping massive amounts of money into. We get an open and porous border with tens, at this point, over 10 million people pouring through the border. We get crime rampant, Bidenflation through the roof, and this is the adults in the room. Well, let's get the kids back at the table then, and let's put the adults at the kids' table and see what we get. I also think people like myself running for Congress on a platform of single bill voting law, term limits for congressmen and staff, a criminalization of lobbying, and seven-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for insider trading show that I am not some sort of madman or lunatic or mentally ill, deranged Trump supporter, but actually a rather intelligent and articulate person that has America's best interest at heart, something that nobody saw coming except for the few people that knew me, and somebody like Bill, who had the opportunity to speak with me at length.
Thanks, Jake. Let me go to Shipley. You have me cracking up for
Hey,
half of it.
who's this guy that just showed up at the top line?
Okay, so yeah, good question, Shipley. I guess I'll
Glad you're
address it.
okay, Crypto.
Yeah, he's
Thanks,
oh,
guys.
yeah, he's
Shipley, Shipley, I'm
okay.
over here. I got in late. I apologize. And I come in and I hear the I'm like, up there's Shipley sputtering up. And Shipley, what's going to happen when they say that these 1512C charges? How are we going to go back in time and purge everything?
I don't.
There it is. He's sputtering up, baby. He's sputtering up.
That's him
You know
spooling
the answer
up.
to that question about retroactivity of Supreme Court decisions. It is not simple, right?
Right. Yeah. No,
it is complicated. But
especially if you've already served your time.
Yeah.
That's the worst.
We have to call Superman and make the Earth spin backwards for Jake.
I know. I don't know what.
I am Superman.
Jake, I can't wait for your run. Ship, you've been in on this, and I know that the case, they finally got up there. In your opinion, I know that Garrett Miller, they're looking at, that one. What took so long? Was it just that no one did it, or what took so long for this 1512C when it was getting kicked around at the Court of Appeals? What took SCOTUS so long?
Well, I don't think it really took them so long. I mean, the Fisher decision was in April. Mm-hmm. You had, it was a 2-1 mess.
Yeah, it was 2-1.
They had a 90 days to file the cert petition, I think. The first cert petition was filed in August. And then all three cert petitions were filed within a week or two of each other. One thing that happened, and I think this is not very well known, is because it's a process thing that you're probably familiar with. But when, there's dozens or hundreds of cert petitions filed out of federal criminal cases every year. And the Solicitor General's office has the right to file a response, but they're not obligated to. And in most instances, Solicitor General's office does not file a response. A lot of these cert petitions are nonsense. Some of them are pro se. And so the Solicitor General picks and chooses where they think there are serious issues that the government needs to weigh in on and file a response or an opposition to the petition. Well, they chose not to file a response to any of the 3 petitions raising the 1512 question, and the Supreme Court entered an order directing them to file a response. That's generally an interesting event when it happens, because it doesn't happen that often. It's like, oh, Mr. or actually Ms. Solicitor General, yes, as a matter of fact, we would like to know the government's position on this petition. That means they're taken seriously. And that's kind of an oh shit moment in the SG's office. And so they filed their response suggesting that, the matter was properly resolved in the court below and there was no reason for the Supreme Court to take the cases up. Said, we don't think they should be taken up. That was in October. 2 months later, the Supreme Court said, we disagree. We're taking it up.
Yeah.
Hey, let me jump in here, Crypto, because
Mhm.
we've gone now 90 minutes. And I had said to you when we set this up, I want to try to not take a bunch of questions from the crowd, not to have, circumstances where we had, 20 people all, having their moment. That really wasn't what I had in mind for the spaces with Jake. But I think we should, take some questions, but let's make them questions, everyone. And we got like another
Oh
half
well,
hour here.
we've gotten good at that, Shipley. We'll run it.
And
We'll run it like a presser.
yeah,
Well, and Brian Zink is in the audience, by the way. He's actually got this 1512 charge, and he's a good dude. I met his dad.
bring him up.
And
I like Ryan. Ryan and I have talked before. Bring him up.
We run a tight ship.
Only when I say so. Otherwise, you guys are a friggin' mess.
Well, have you been in Trump Tuesday? That's a very structured event.
That's a very tight ship.
I know. Crypto bust my balls.
Is there any chance we could actually get Scott to talk? I don't think I've ever heard Scott's voice. He always sits out there and listens.
You got to be joking.
And never
it's like magic. It's like butter over toast on a cold winter evening.
You might
Florida.
go unregistered to vote just so you can re-register because Scott told you. That's
actually a really good idea. I'm gonna unregister to re-register just so Scott can help.
No offense to a lot of the familiar the familiar images I see here, what the hell, avatars I see here. But how about if we bring up some people that we never hear from, just to give them an opportunity?
Well, we can't force them, Shipley.
No, I understand.
This is
we got
court here.
Okay, well we got Yvonne. We don't know Andrew Prine. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Who I've never heard from. We got Johnny Dice, who we've heard from all the time, that we love. Let's keep looking down though. People that have never spoken before. Let me see here. Seahorse, D Artist, D Stonk. Okay.
I like Bullteeth too. He really.
I like Bullteeth. I like Bullteeth.
When he put our scrotum T-shirt in Momo's tweet, that did it for me. I said, this guy's got a sense of humor.
We have Ashley, who's been endorsed by everyone under the sun in Arizona. Let me see here. Keep moving down. We got John. Just massive invites, people. Just
if Mark can keep it quick, he's a smart guy. I think he's
Lala's over here laughing. She's getting an invite. All right, people.
Get Ashley up there. Ashley is the shit. I love Ashley.
Yeah, I went to her profile and like everyone who is under the sun living has endorsed her. It's pretty amazing. All right, so we got some people here. Scott, we're desperately waiting to hear your voice as I relax here in bed. So there's no pressure on you.
So here's what we'll do. Listen, we're gonna run it like a presser, with the exception of Ryan, because we're gonna let him
get the names. Mark, get the names right.
What did I say?
No, I'm just saying, make sure you run a good presser. Shipley's here.
Yes, sir.
We want a tight presser.
Every question has to begin with an insult of crypto for being late.
I mean, not exactly late. You can check your DMs, but you know what? Start with something bad about crypto, and then ask the question. But really roast me. Like, go to Grok and get some really dirty shit.
So let me put Ryan on hold then. Ryan, hang out. We're gonna give you extra time. I'm gonna start with Johnny then. Johnny Dice.
Oh God.
Your insult to crypto, and then your question.
Well, I called him and he didn't pick up the phone, so he complains that I do that all the time too. So we're even now, crypto.
Yeah, no, that is true.
I
I
don't
have
know.
the Johnny Dice mix.
That's all right. I don't know if you want me to go first. Maybe you want to hold me off. I have a little technical legal question along
Johnny,
the Trump lines.
You're on the plate, bud. The pitch.
Well,
to
no.
the
If I can bring up the question, I will. But I don't want to derail the space. That's why I'm saying I don't know. If
You're
you
on the clock, kid. You're on the clock. Let's go.
All right. And my question really is to you, Crypto, and to Shipley, and it's going to be on the Ed Meese argument that the special counsel isn't constitutional, and because he wasn't confirmed by the Senate. Now, I did a little research into this, and I couldn't find a lot of answers, but it's my understanding that the case was brought up with somebody trying to beat a subpoena under Mueller, and the Mueller argument was, and the court agreed, that the special counsel is an inferior officer and doesn't have to be confirmed by the Senate. So my question is, both you and Shipley were federal prosecutors, right? Working for an attorney general who was a superior officer and confirmed by the Senate. So what's the difference between your position and what Jack Smith's special counsel position is? Because obviously that's the argument that Smith is going to have to make, since a court already ruled he's an inferior officer. He can't necessarily make the case that now he's a superior officer, can he? That's my question. It's very technical, but so what's the difference between you guys and the special counsel then?
He doesn't possess. He's not an officer. Okay, and the question is, can he be invested by the attorney general with the same prosecutorial authorities of officers? Officers are in offices. Offices of the executive can only be created by the executive branch. They cannot be created by the attorney general. So if you do not sit in an office, which a special counsel is not an office because it was not created by Congress, then you are not an officer. If you are not an officer, you cannot be given the equivalent authority of a U.S. attorney, which is what he has. He cannot convene grand juries. He cannot, use the compulsive power of the courts to summon witnesses. He cannot ask a grand jury to return an indictment, and he cannot then prosecute that indictment on behalf of the Justice Department as if he was an officer of the Justice Department, because he's not. The officers of the Justice Department are established by statute. They are the Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, Assistant Attorney General, Solicitor General, 11 Assistant Attorney Generals, and 94 U.S. Attorneys. Those are the officers of the Department of Justice because they occupy offices created by Congress. That's how the president's prosecutorial authority flows. Jack Smith was put in a position pursuant to a regulation by the Attorney General. That is not the same thing.
Yeah, Ship. I mean, you said it as well as I could do it. I mean, the fact is that the actions that he is taking can only be done by a properly appointed federal officer. And if you look back and see how Jack Smith got to where Jack Smith is, it's just he's not there. He's not a federal officer, so he's convening grand juries. He's doing things that the 94 U.S. attorneys and their subordinates who are officers would do. And I haven't had too much time to read up on it, but it's an interesting question. And I mean, God, what happens if they wind up determining at some point that that this guy's in a position that he never should have been in? I mean, talk about trying to undo the wheels on this one.
So Shipley, you are in that agreement with Crypto that his position is unconstitutional.
No, I believe it is. I believe it's unconstitutional.
No, you believe it
Johnny,
is constitutional
Johnny,
because it's by regulation.
no, the regulation
Mm,
does not.
no.
You cannot create constitutional compliance by regulation. You know,
So Smith is unconstitutional, i.e., Mueller was unconstitutional as well.
and
Because, like I said,
wait,
there was
Johnny, wait. John Durham was constitutional.
I
Why?
agree with that. Yes,
Why? Because he was a U.S. attorney.
at the time, and he was appointed as special counsel.
Exactly,
Absolutely.
and the other two, her and the guy out of St. Louis, they were also U.S. attorneys when they were all made special counsel. So they had been given senatorial confirmation authorizing them to exercise prosecutorial power. Mueller was a private citizen.
Correct.
Jack Smith was a private citizen, and that's the distinction. Now,
and
I want to ask you, Johnny, I think it's pretty obvious. You have not read my Substack article that goes through all of this, right?
I think I did, but you touched basically on the Smith appointment, but not necessarily. You didn't. I don't believe you touched on the case under Mueller, where some guy was trying to beat a subpoena, and his argument was Mueller was unconstitutional, and it took 3 months for the judge or the judges to rule no, the special counsel is an inferior officer. At least that's what I read in articles. I have not been able to find the case to read.
Yeah, I suspect that was just at the district court level, and whoever was subject to complete subpoena just complied. It was not chased up like this one has been.
Well, I thought it was interesting. I guess my question was too, and I'll leave it after this. What I thought was interesting. Okay, so Ed Meese filed this, third party. I'm not on anybody's behalf amicus brief. The court didn't necessarily have to even address it, right? But they chose to take it up, and it's my understanding next week they're having oral arguments on it.
Well, okay, interesting proposition there, and I'm not. So Meese filed that in the Supreme Court as an amicus brief when the Supreme Court was considering whether or not to take up the immunity issue on an expedited basis. And Meese's point was, and remember, it was Jack Smith who made the filing to the Supreme Court, asking the Supreme Court to bring the case up on an expedited basis on for cert pending judgment, special Supreme Court rule. Basically, skip the appellate court, go straight to the Supreme Court. That was Smith's request. That's when Meese jumped in and said, "Hold on, he's not properly representing the United States, therefore doesn't even have jurisdiction to make this request." Now, what's happened is since that time, Supreme Court says, no, we're not going to do it. Meese filed the same brief in the appellate court, and the appellate court has now issued an order telling the two sides that they want both sides to be prepared to address Meese's argument, as well as another amicus brief filing, which says that the immunity issue is not subject to appeal at this time. It needs to go back to the district court for there to be a trial, and then after a trial, the immunity issue can be raised. And the court has said, we want both sides to be prepared to argue both of those issues. I think that is a little bit suspect, because it's like you're telling us that you want us to argue issues that we haven't briefed. I mean, the appellate court gets to order what they want. I just think that's, a little bit. I think the Meese issue is an interesting one. I'm not sure it'll get any traction in the appeals court. Might get a traction in the Supreme Court if it gets there. I think the one about the immunity issue not being subject to appeal now is a loser, because the case upon which all this is based, which is Nixon versus Fitzgerald involving civil immunity, that was in the exact same posture. The appellate court wasn't going to take it up because the appellate court said it wasn't an issue subject to interlocutory appeal, and the Supreme Court said, no, it is. And the Supreme Court took it up. So I don't think the appellate court can now say immunity from criminal prosecution isn't subject to interlocutory appeal. It's like, well, how do you distinguish the two immunities?
Thanks, Ship. Thanks, Johnny. Listen, guys, raise your hands if you're in the speaker box. If not, you'll be rotated.
And then Mark, just real quick, while Shipley's in here, because he loves him and he's fighting for him over in the kitty court, we do have the scrotum shirts for sale up top. I need to sell at least one to at least tie Mark from his space.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the donations for this shirt are going to go to Shipley. We're going to send him a shirt. He promised he's going to wear the Scrotum the Cat shirt
Keep
at his.
keep your money. I'm not wearing it.
No, it's gonna go.
He
It's
promised.
gonna go under his shirt in court, and it's
And
for good luck.
And we're also going to send, when Jake, send me your address. We're going to send you I mean, you've worn some other crazy shit. So we're going to send you a Scrotum the Cat shirt. And we're going to send that off to you. So can't wait for it. And yeah, just listen, just need one sale, people. Up top in the nest, click on it, buy a great shirt, save a life of a cat, a little kitty. And we're good to go, man. We're good to go. And then off it goes to Jake.
Yeah, I look forward to that. Seeing the picture of Jake in the Scrotum shirt. I'm sure we'll
I'll
see it.
send you a picture.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
that's going to go viral, baby.
But my only request is if and when you get the opportunity, you send me a picture in horns and face paint.
We can do that.
Re-rate.
We can do that. I can wear my crypto mask, get horns, and then I'll face paint the mask. I can do it.
Hey, I only
like
came
it.
in to see if you managed to sell Ship a shirt yet. What the fuck?
This guy, dude, this guy's a tough cookie to crack. I'm working on it. Relax. Come on, Jack.
He really doesn't even understand. Like it was great comic relief. It was.
He doesn't understand. Shipley could have been the quintessential amazing defense attorney for this cat, and he passed it by.
I'm a dog guy.
We wouldn't even have the shirt if Shipley defended him.
Yeah, right. That's true.
But I keep saying this because it's not said enough. Is Crypto and I will be trying courts in this sort of new space, trying cases in this new X space. That could be something that goes before SCOTUS. It could be a major controversial shooting or use of force. So it was sort of something that we kicked around for a long time. We just put it into practice with a theatrical sort of mock trial of Scrotum.
Yeah, Scrotus in front of the SCOTUS.
Yes, and Jake and Shipley are now barred, so they can practice before the court.
Yeah, Jake, congratulations on being ex-barred. There's no prohibitions here. Anybody can do it. You just have to be able to put your thoughts together and argue. So
I clearly couldn't do it.
No.
Let's move it, people. Get some shirt sales, and let's have some questions for Jake and Ship.
So, guys, we're gonna go to you and just say who your question goes to, and then ask your question. Let's see if Michael can set the standard. Go ahead, Michael.
Well, you forget we first have to start with criticism of crypto. So I've got so many to pick from. I don't even know where to start. But let's try this. We'll give a little inside baseball. I don't know what excuse crypto gave y'all tonight for being late, but here's the inside baseball. He was pissed that Mark cheated on him last night with Laura. So there you go. Right, crypto? Am I right? Am I right, buddy?
Listen. I don't need to get into personal details tonight, but we all know Mark was clout chasing last night. He can apparently stay up late for Laura Loomer spaces, but not mine. That's all I'm going to say here.
Oh, my God. You told me to go up.
All right, you two. The odd couple. Okay, here's the question. So I can read the quote, but it goes back to Jack Smith. So recently, I'm sure you guys saw it, he did something. I don't even know what it's called, but basically he insinuated that if Trump was to be reelected, he would use the State of the Union to have his people go after people. And literally, I think he says kill people. So my question is, one, what is that in reference to? And how can any attorney make some type of accusation like that in a legal manner? It's all like, it's all theory. I mean, it's just crazy talk. So I know, Crypto, you've brought it up in the past about the other female attorney that's made derogatory statements about Trump in the past. But I think you understand the question. I hope you do. How does that work, and how can it be permitted?
I know the references. I mean, I read it. What he's saying is, if you accept Trump's argument of absolute immunity, which is not exactly Trump's argument, but if you accept Trump's argument of absolute immunity, and that he has to be I'm starting to get a little bit tired here. He has to be impeached and convicted before he can be prosecuted. Then, if he urged his followers to kill enough members of the Democratic Party, they could never get to the 2/3 vote necessary to remove him. So, in other words, kill enough people and you can't be removed. And if you can't be removed, you can't be prosecuted. Therefore, kill more people. Now, it is a form of argument that crypto might remember. It's a form of argument called reductio ad absurdum. Basically, if you take the defendant's argument and reduce it to an absurd extreme, you can understand why the argument should not be accepted. But the point I made is, if we get to the point where the President of the United States has sufficient numbers of the opposition party killed to avoid impeachment, we've got a lot bigger problems than immunity. It's just, to me, it is an unserious suggestion or proposition made by Jack Smith, and is just reflects what has always, and I mean before he was appointed, bothered me about this guy. I don't know him. I've never crossed paths with him, but I know of his work when he headed up the public integrity section of the criminal division of Main Justice, and I was still in the department. He was controversial then.
Well done, Ship. And thank you to Shelley for buying a T-shirt. We have it. We need one more to beat Mark from last night. And off it goes to Jake.
Don't do it, guys.
Just listen.
Don't
We
beat
got
me.
230 people. One person can buy a shirt,
Do it.
beat Mark, and do a good thing and get the Shaman Man a shirt here. So we're off.
baby.
We're off, baby. We're off. Mark, do you want to go to Philip?
Yeah, we could do. Let me see here. Philip, free speech activist. Insult crypto, and then pick your person, your expert, and then ask your question, sir.
Sorry. I wanted to say something that I saw. I saw that is a J6 space. Crypto. I don't do crypto, unfortunately. I'm busy trying to get these legal fees paid. But to those of you that do crypto, props to you. Mad respect. I hope you guys make a bunch of money. I really do. Would it be all right if I talked about some J6 things that just came out?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. So I saw a clip of Ron DeSantis. I'm gonna try not to yell. I'm so fucking mad. And if you don't mind, I'll just put it up in the nest that everyone can see it. That's okay with you guys.
Do your thing, Philip.
All right, it's coming up in
Philip, I'm
3.
looking at the one here where it says DeSantis said that J6 defendants did not display patriotism by protesting.
Yeah. Here's that's one problem. That's one thing I'll address. But here's the real.
Hold on, who's banging
Jesus.
on a typewriter?
Shipwrecked.
Who the fuck's killing a typewriter from 1910?
Oh, hang on.
Good Lord, Shipley. give those fucking fingers a break.
Yeah,
Way to
go GoFundMe for your keyboard.
It's the Olympia manual that I carry around with me.
I don't even know what that is.
Sounded like a Smith Corona.
Brutal, Ship. Okay, I'm sorry, Philip. You're talking Ron DeSantis. He said something about J6.
Yeah. Yep. And no worry, your space. Glad to be here. No need to apologize. So the thing about Ron DeSantis is that this is not the first time. This is the second time that he's been on national television, live television, in front of the entire country, where a Democrat has said point blank that January 6th was an insurrection. Blatantly told that lie to his face in front of hundreds of thousands, possibly millions of people. And every single time, he does not push back on the lie. He just lets it be said, doesn't push back. And also here, he not only does not push back on the lie, he puts a knife in the back of all the J6ers. He says, no, they were not acting patriotically. Here's the thing you have to understand. A lot of these people are currently in prison, right? And every single night, they say it very loudly. The national anthem. They sing the national anthem very loudly. So here's the thing. To say that these people are not patriotic is ridiculous, and it's counterproductive, because no matter what Democrats do, BLM, Antifa, they can burn down the country for an entire year. Democrats will say, oh, they're standing up for George Floyd, they're standing up for Black lives. They'll say anything to defend them. Meanwhile, Trump supporters that showed up to the Capitol on January 6th, some of them who did go a little too far, but it wasn't because they're criminals. They thought that they were protecting our republic, protecting democracy. A lot of them honestly believe they're doing the right thing at the time. They wanted to make sure that the election was legitimate. These are not people that are thinking, oh, I'm a criminal, so I'm going to be a criminal. I want to do an insurrection. No one was thinking that shit. No one was thinking that. That's all nonsense, all right? These people thought they were standing up for their country. That's honestly what they all thought. So for DeSantis to claim, oh, yeah, I'll fight for you. I'm going to fight for you, and I'm going to take on the deep state. What a fucking pussy. He's full of shit. He won't even stand up for J6ers. He won't even stand up for people that are getting railroaded in courts, getting thrown in prison for 20 years. He won't even stand up for them, but he's going to fight the deep state? What a joke. He won't even stand up to the people on CNN that say January 6th was an insurrection. Obviously, it wasn't an insurrection when people show up unarmed and then they leave when they're told to leave. Obviously, it isn't a freaking insurrection. And by the way, it was Jacob Chansley over here. Was he going to be the next Secretary of Defense? Was he going to be the next lead? Was he going to be the next leader of the Republican Party in Congress? It's bullshit. It's the
Maybe
easiest
now.
lie to destroy, but every single time he buckles down and bends the fucking knee, because Ron DeSantis is not strong. He's a coward. He's a fraud. And I would love to say it to his face, but I can't stand these people who will not defend the J6ers. Vivek Ramaswamy came out of nowhere, and he's defending J6ers harder than any other person on the Republican debate stage. I'm not talking about Donald Trump because he's not on that Republican debate stage, but here's the thing. Nikki Haley won't say a single word about J6ers. Ron DeSantis just says, okay, I'll pardon some of them. Chris Christie says we're all evil people, and Donald Trump deserves to go to prison for the rest of his life. Then Asa Hutchinson, whatever the hell his name is, this guy's even bigger rhino than Chris Christie. So it's like, at some point, guys, we just have to say fuck all these people. It's Trump for now, and then Vivek is the future. Because guys, we cannot have people representing us. They don't even have the balls to simply go up there and call out blatant lies and defend us. I mean, if I can do it, why can't they do it? If everyone in this space can do it, why the hell can't they do it? I mean, it's so easy to point out. By the way, Democrats did over 1,000 riots. That's something else he could put out there, but he won't. What the hell's wrong with when Vivek Ramaswamy goes out and every single time the clip will generate millions and millions of views online of him destroying Democrats whenever they talk about January 6th, whenever they talk about white supremacy or whatever. Question is, how come Republicans like Ron DeSantis and Nikki Haley won't do the same thing?
No,
We
I
cannot
think
have
they're
people like
very.
this representing
I
us,
think
man.
I think their campaign and their advisors and themselves are very disconnected with where the people are. I think they're taking the shots they think they're supposed to take, and I don't think it's paying out. Thanks, Philip.
And that's why I'm running for Congress. I just want to say that's why I'm running for Congress, because we don't have real representation in the Congress.
Yeah, and Jake, I would say this: there's something super American about you returning to Congress, and
Oh yeah, can you imagine the
uh,
statement it would make to the swamp and the deep state to send me back to DC as a congressman? Could you imagine?
they would have such a hard time, and I'm assuming you'd wear a suit, just with a little bit of horns, maybe
The
face
horns.
paint. Yeah, I mean,
Absolutely not. Horns
you'd have
and
to be a
shirtless.
gentleman. No, the rules are back. Remember, they lost the dress code for a couple weeks, and Fetterman and other people took it too far, and apparently a dress code was returned. So no,
I think it was after the gay sex thing. I think that's probably when they were like, well, we can't have BDSM bondage clothing in the Senate, so we have to demand people wear suits.
yeah, I'm not sure if that's it, but it could be. But yeah, I see you're a gentleman. You'll be in a suit, but it's gonna have to have some horns or something. It's gonna have to. There's no way around it.
Well,
Um,
send me to Congress and find out.
yes, yeah, I know.
Right. And on the first day, he's going to walk in with a scrotum T-shirt, which we just sold another one. So there we go,
Oh
buddy. There we go.
no, I got dethroned, guys. I had a good night. I sold a shirt, and now you had to take
That
me.
was a pathetic effort, Mark.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah. We
yeah,
all know.
crypto. He has been properly on my ass about my poor salesmanship with the scrotum shirts. So Shipley,
We
you could
should have
help
had you
me.
pushing a cart in New York City selling them.
Someone who just bought a shirt said he or she likes scrotums. I mean, awesome. I mean, who doesn't like
Who
scrotums?
doesn't?
Buy a shirt and get on board. Let's go.
No, it's not. It's not a question of you like scrotums or whether you might not even know it, but you like scrotum. Okay, maybe you like your own, maybe you like someone else's, but don't
Or
act
the
like you don't
cat.
like
Or the
scrotum
cat.
or the cat. There's some scrotum out there that's for you. All right, let me go to Lala. You know the deal. Insult crypto. Pick your expert. Ask your question. Go ahead.
Okay, so I definitely need to insult crypto because I got like sucked in from my Minecraft, and but I just wanted to say that he needs a new
Minecraft.
photographer.
How, how old?
Minecraft.
How old are you? 10?
No, I'm like 50, but I still like Minecraft.
Oh my
But
God! This is an insult that's turning around here. All
This
right,
is
bring it. Let's
wild.
go, Lala. Bring me
Yeah.
an
I just
insult.
wanted to say that you need a new photographer because I haven't seen Red Eye like that since like the 70s. So get a new photographer.
I can't.
And then
I'm really high all the time. I can't.
and then because a lot of the mess that we're in right now is because all the little weasels and snakes that got in with lacking integrity. So I wanted to definitely tell everyone to support Jake, and then a lot of people to grab their balls and stand up and do the same thing that Jake is doing so we can infiltrate with people of integrity. So I wanted to maybe ask you guys how we could lead people down that road, and if you could help them hold their hand and like show them how to get into running for Congress and things from the bottom all the way to the top, because the minions are just as bad at keeping the shit show going as the people at the top. So what do you think? How can we lead them there?
I would say that it starts by speaking truth without fear. And in order to create solutions, you have to understand the problem. Part of the reason that we're in the mess that we're in is because we have a bunch of people arguing over calendars and dumb shit. Okay? What we need to be talking about in like lockstep is like, for example, single bill voting law. We should have done that a long time ago. And the fact of the matter is, the Republicans in office could be bringing single issue bills to the House floor right now. They could have brought a bill for the border to the House floor today if they wanted to, but they're not doing it because they're a bunch of eunuch cowards. They're a bunch of spineless jellyfish. Okay, when it comes to individuals running for Congress, I don't necessarily think that everybody should follow my lead when it comes to not taking donations. I think a lot of the reason why people take donations and why so much money is pumped into politics is because a lot of the time that money is used by candidates to get name and face recognition. And thanks to the Mockingbird media, that's something that I already have. So I don't really need so much to worry about that. But I will say that if you understand the problem and then you're offering a solution, and that's what you're talking about, and it's a solution that every voter can agree on, because I think every voter, Republican, Democrat, Libertarian, Green Party, Independent, they can all agree single bill voting law needs to happen. An amendment for term limits for congressmen and staff needs to happen. A criminalization of lobbying needs to happen. And 7-figure fines, expulsion, and prosecution for all Congress members caught insider trading needs to happen. So we need to start proposing solutions. People need to start proposing solutions, and they have to do so in a way where they're not afraid to have the woke left or the conservative mob of people that are, and trust me when I say I've watched both of these groups live in an echo chamber where you're not either conservative enough or you're not woke enough. We need to not worry about what these fringe people think and just go, on something that everybody can agree on. And once that takes place, And once the dialogue changes and everybody's talking about these things, then that is when things change.
Thanks, Lala and Jake. Ryan, we're gonna give you a little bit of time. Ship called you up. What do you have, Ryan?
Well, I just completely agree with with Jake on this one. When I was arrested and the cell door closed for the first time in DC, I knew right then that I wanted to stand up and stand in the gap for the American people, because Jake is absolutely right. We don't have equal representation in Congress, and that's why I decided to run for Congress as well. I made it on the ballot the very last day that you could get on. I'm running against an incumbent that's been here. He's the head of the finance committee. And, all of the money and stuff that goes out the window to Ukraine, to, special interest groups, whatever lobbyists are trying to pull off, all of that can be eliminated by the single bill voting. And so I'm absolutely for all of that. I'm hoping that whenever me and Jake get to Congress, we can get our own sets of horns, and we'll co-sponsor a bill uh, wearing the stuff that we were wearing on January 6th. And so I'm just like Jake. I was a completely peaceful protester. I didn't go in the building. I was actually tasked by a United States Capitol police officer to stay out on the east porch and take pictures of people that were attacking them. And then those same police officers testified against me at trial and said that I was part of the problem, despite the fact that they gave me a direct order to do something. And, for me, whenever I think of America, whenever I think at what we've become, I have a grandfather that served in World War II. I have his father before him who worked in the oil field, that was the fifth person ever hired at the company of ConocoPhillips. And we have watched, at least in my area, the Biden administration destroy everything. I live in Lubbock, Texas. I've been here for 10 years. Our border is in shambles. That's another thing. Single absolute bill voting. We see all of these different politicians that they come in and they say, well, I had to vote for this bill because it was the lesser of the evils. To not approve this is to not fund the military, or and they only say the parts that look good out loud. And that's the where all of politics has gone, is where like DeSantis tonight saying that everyone that was at the Capitol was not acting patriotic. Well, what are we doing then? Like, if it means enough that we are willing to not take plea deals, get on Twitter, talk about things, look at incarceration, look at everything, if that's not patriotic, I'm not exactly sure what is. And I just wanted to iterate on something too that Shipley was talking about um, a lot earlier in the space, whenever he was talking about like the total cesspool that the DC juries are when it comes to um, the January 6th cases. So I'm a Christian. I serve a God that tells me I cannot tell a lie. And I fail at everything in my Christian walk. If you're looking for an example of a perfect Christian, please go to, someone on CNN or MSNBC and look for that direction. But, if we're going to talk about, like, that's the reason I didn't take a plea deal. But I always like to bring this story up because I think that it's very influential to show just how far up the voting for Democrats that this jury pool is. So whenever I was at trial in September, there was a man that stepped forward towards the podium during jury selection, and he gave his name. I can't remember what it is right now, but he is the United States government chemical reporter to Joe Biden. He literally reports directly to the president. And he gave his name, he gave his position, and the judge asked him, he said, are you capable of giving hearing this case and being impartial? And he says, no, I cannot. He says, I believe that everyone that was at the Capitol that day is a criminal and that I should not be involved in this case. And the judge then turns and says, well, have you seen anything about this defendant, Ryan Zink? Have you seen anything on the media? Have you done any research about him? Have you heard anything about his case in particular? And he says no. Then the judge asks him, he says, do you think, based on that set of rules, that you would be able to stay fair and impartial for this trial? And he says, well, I guess I could. He was approved and told to come back at 1:30 to find out if he was selected as a juror, which we had to immediately burn one of our three and strike him for cause. And, it just, things like that, the lack of representation, not to mention the fact that I was never given my discovery. I was working on my father's campaign for his congressional run in Arizona, his first one. And Jake had said that he had met my dad. Jake's from out where my dad's at. And surprisingly, I've never met Jake, but we talk all the time in spaces at some level or another. But I took over 1,000 pictures and videos on January 6th, whether it was from Facebook or Instagram or my camera or my cell phone. And when I went to trial, we requested, I think, 13 times for the DOJ to turn over my discovery. They never did. And they gave us 27, 28 pictures and like 9 videos that they felt were relevant. And they did not give me the rest of my discovery. And we also asked the judge in my case immediately on the second to last day of my trial. The judge was we were presented with some evidence that was not given to us. And it was a photo of me standing behind the barricades, and I'm trying to take pictures of what is going on to the left of me, but I do not know what is happening because there are so many people mixed in between all of this area. And they give us this picture, and my attorneys are like, objection, where did this come from? We have asked for discovery multiple times, and it wasn't even like they could hide this. They never gave it to us. And we asked the judge, will you now rule for the prosecution to turn over defense and to turn over discovery to defense? And the motion was denied. And, when you see something particularly like this, when you're standing in my shoes, and you've already gone to the gulag where they tried to kill me by poisoning me every day with chemical cleaner inside of my food and stuffing raw chicken inside of my water pipe because I asked to change cells because I had septic sewer water all over my floor because the toilet was stopped up. You start to see that your voice doesn't mean anything unless you make your voice heard. And so to wrap everything into a big conclusion of this, there is nothing more patriotic than standing up for something that you don't believe that you believe in, even if there's consequences. Because the consequence of doing nothing far supersedes not doing anything. Because at that point, you relinquish control to those who feel like they are guaranteed or warranted the power that they possess. And they will do with that what they choose to because there will be no one to stand up to them and stop them. And that's why I love Scott Pressler when he says, get registered to vote. It's why I love Jake whenever he says that we need to get control of our politicians and start making severe consequences for whenever they get out of line. And it's why I decided to run, because I love America and I'm ready to take on the next step just like Jake is. And that's where I'm going to end for the night.
Thanks, Ryan. Much appreciated. I just want to give a shout out to Scott Pressler if he wants to come up and say something. Also, a shout out to Beard Vet. Beard Vet, great to see you tonight. He is a sponsor of our space. And if you want to go buy some coffee, some great tumblers, and some stuff over with Beard Vet, you can use the code. We have a promo code now, guys. It's no longer
Yeah.
promo code anyone else. It's the
Don't want to hear
number.
that in here.
Yeah, it's the number 2, and it's Feds. So we're going back to 2 Feds. And I think Miss G should like that. Miss G wanted the old 2 Fed
She's a
stuff.
coffee drinker.
She is, and she's not coming up, and I'm asking her to come up. So let's do this, guys. Scott, if you want to come up and say anything, that would be fantastic. Anyone up in the speaker box, if you want to throw your hand up, that would be great too. Let me know where we're at, guys, because we have Shipley, we have Jake here. So, all right. So I'm going to go to Kaylee or Kali. I apologize. I'm mispronouncing it. We'll go to you, and then we'll go over to Jack. And if you guys want to request, now's the time. Patricia, I'll bring you up. So now's the time. And again, if you go to beardvet.com, great coffee. They have Beard Vet Tactical now, and just great stuff over there. And Beard Vet was nice enough to do some giveaways on our New Year's Eve. So great company, great guy. We love him. So use the promo code 2FEDS. Ms. G should be stocking up on her coffee now.
I just want to quick thing about Beard Vet too, guys. He runs his company. He runs it well. It's growing. But I really like that does not hold him back from using his First Amendment on what I call full auto. And if somebody gets in his way, he'll call him out, and he's ruthless. So if also I'll say give him a follow if you like aggression, you like winners. You like jokes, you like devastating tweets and mean tweets. Maybe give Beard Vet a follow as well.
Civilly disagreeable.
Yeah, sure. Yeah,
civilly disagreeable.
I like that. Yeah, it's
all right.
Makes sense.
Let's go. Callie,
Yes.
is that
Yes.
it? How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you. Beard Vet, I'm glad that you're back on X. I don't know what happened there, but that was it's good to see you back. Ryan and Philip, thank you for sharing. You're giving me a little bit more insight as I come into these spaces and trying to understand what the mindset is. With that being said, Ryan, you didn't, you stated that you didn't even go in or anything like that. The thing that I found that was really odd is that the brochures that we found on the internet was telling you the things that you could take and could not take. And I swear to you, it said no toasters. I don't even know what that's about. But anyway, so I may or may not have been in the area. But the next day I went and seen my ancestors that came over in 1730 into Augusta County, Virginia. So it was a nice, an American historical trip, if you will, and I'll just leave it there. But I do have a question for Jake. And this is, please don't take this ostracizing or anything like that. I just want to get like a mindset. If, let me see how to put this. Okay, so if there are the laws about the Capitol and so forth, speaking, I don't know if you've spoken about this before or anybody's ever asked you this before, but I'm just trying to get into what the thoughts were at the time. As far as like the steps go, entering the Capitol, things like that. Was there anything there that like, were you like all patriotic, you're going to make it right? You know, was there kind of a feeling there that maybe, I don't know, I shouldn't go on the stairs or I shouldn't go in or anything like that? I'm just, what my view is that my feet were,
I think I understand what you're getting
okay.
at.
So my thing is that my feet were froze. I left. But if I was in that position, being that I'm probably about 20, 25 years older. But if I had been in that position, for example, I went to Rolling Thunder 2017. We were at the wall and they were doing the bagpipes in a completely different circumstance. But this is, you'll see what I mean when I get to my point. So we were at the wall. They were playing Amazing Grace on the bagpipes. It's a very solemn moment. And I had these two guys off to the side that were cackling, smoking a cigar, chitty-chatting and everything. And, you know, I'm not even a $1.10, okay? So I went over to these two large guys and I noticed that they had Canada on the back of their patches.
Callie,
Yes.
Callie, I'm sorry. It's just it's getting a little late. Do you mind?
Okay, so I'm just
be a little more pointed to the
I'm,
question.
I think she's asking me what my motivations were and what I was
Patricia,
thinking.
hang on. We're gonna go.
I think she was asking basically what are you thinking doing that? And like as a woman of wisdom, she's like, I never would have done anything like that. Look, when I saw what was happening outside the building, and I tried to calm things down at first, okay, and then things, who's going to listen to the guy in horns and face paint telling everybody to calm down, right? So when I saw what was happening outside the building, and when I saw people breaking
You
in,
were encouraging the crowd to go in.
Patricia,
I
okay,
saw
can we
you.
get rid of her?
Yo, Patricia.
Patricia.
All right. So now everyone's muted. Patricia, my understanding is that you were invited here, so that's great. If you want to stay here, you're going to put your hand up, and we'll get to you. If there's another outburst, you're going to be booted. Everyone talks, and that's how we run our spaces.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you know what? If you want to laugh, you're gone. See ya. So,
Patricia, we're gonna
you're
give you a
gone.
chance.
You're
Is that
gone, and we're moving on.
sorry?
That was a candidate for DC Council, by
That's
the way.
wild. I know. I wanted.
Yeah. Anyway, so my thought process at the time as people were going into the building was, oh shit, the stuff that's going on outside the building most certainly cannot happen inside, because that's very bad juju. The Capitol building is built on ley lines. It's like a sacred temple. I did not want congressmen or police officers to get harmed. I did not want vandalism, theft, or violence to take place inside. So I decided, even though it might result in legal action, to ensure that nothing really bad happened inside the building. And I knew the only way that I could do that was by going in. And this is verified by the fact that, like, it's on video, 30 seconds, like, inside the building. There's me on camera telling somebody to stop stealing out of the break room. Also, when I saw there were people inside the Senate chamber, I walked up to the police and said, hey, there's people down there. If you want, I can help you guys, make sure there's no vandalism or violence or theft, kind of help you like clear the chamber. And they're like, yeah, come on, let's go. And so that's why we were walking around from locked door to locked door. And then as soon as I exited the building, shortly thereafter, Donald Trump sent out his tweet telling everybody to go home. So I walked up to the building. I walked up to the door that people were trying to get in. And I told them, stop what you're doing. Donald Trump told everybody to go home. You guys need to stop what you're doing. You need to go home. So my motivation from the get-go was quite clear, I think. And I think that's evident based on what it is that I did inside and outside the building, both before, during, and after the breach of the Capitol.
Okay, I did see
So
your tape. I did see the tape about you standing outside. Of course, I didn't see that until it was released, 3.5 years after the fact. But I have seen that video. I was just wondering the point of view. So you're basically in a position of being a peacekeeper, being a patriot and being a peacekeeper. That was your sentiment.
yes,
Okay.
that was why I went on December 12th and on January 6th, because I was trying to plug the highest possible frequencies of peace and harmony into the grid system of DC, into the ley lines of DC. And I'm not going to, belabor you with the explanation for what that means. But long story short, it's a sacred site.
Yes.
And I didn't want anything, negative to happen inside the building. And I was doing everything I could to be a peacekeeper, both on December 12th and on January 6th.
Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate what you've done. And I'm sorry of what you guys have had to go through. And also, I've just wanted to ask you that question for for quite a while. So it's out there. Thanks for letting me have the stage. Everybody have a good night. Thanks.
Thanks. Yeah, not a problem. Just come in, raise your hand, act like a normal person, not a fucking raging animal, and we'll get to you, right?
Yeah,
Obviously,
I love my
Patricia couldn't handle it. Too much tea, too much testosterone raging in those liberal bones, Mark.
No, there was too much freedom. Jake's a free man. He's using his free speech. It was too much for her to handle.
So are you saying that Patricia doesn't like freedom?
I'm saying she can't handle it. Like some people can't handle their booze. Some
I've
people
got
can't
info
handle
on
their,
her.
That's not good. You definitely don't want that person in office. Oof.
Patricia, the lady that we just kicked out was
she's back. She's back on her alt account, Commissioner Patricia Inguino. Like I don't see you, Patricia. Well, Patricia, I'll tell you what, Patricia.
Self-appropriately. We're
Hold on.
Here.
No, listen, Patricia. If you act like a grown-up
or a lady,
we'll or whatever. Yeah, if you act like a non-fucking animal, we'll give you the mic. But if you're gonna act like a fucking raging lunatic, you're gonna get the boot.
And in case you couldn't
There's
tell,
only
I
one
was
person that has
actually
horns in here.
yeah, I actually wanted to
Hey,
come.
just to let you know, I have a video of a Patricia Aguino admitting to entering the Capitol on January 6th, protesting January 6th as a counter-protester, but she's still free and has become a commissioner in January 2023. I wonder if that's the same person. I'll share it on my feed right now so you guys can have it on the up
Oh
in the
my
nest
God.
here, and I'll put it up in the nest.
Now
I've
we
also
have
got
to have
pictures.
I think
Patricia come up.
Patricia,
I also have
a
pictures of
little.
Patricia Aguino 3 feet from me on the east porch on January 6th, and she's never been arrested or prosecuted.
This is
Oh,
I feel like
Patricia.
Mark.
Please come up and defend yourself.
Mark.
feel
This
like,
is
yeah.
what we call caliente in Spanish.
The
Caliente
plot
means a
thickens.
little spicy in here.
I
But
feel like I
yes,
need to call
Patricia, we
Laura.
would.
I need to
This
call.
is
Patricia, we'll
this is
give you
also
the.
the same Patricia Aguino that shows up just about every night to the DC jail yelling at the protesters with a megaphone all kinds of obscenities and calling people out on every single thing that she feels is relevant despite the fact that everyone else is there peacefully. That's the same Patricia Aguino.
Clear the
Oh,
air.
so
Clear the air.
you
Damn.
guys blocked my other account because you couldn't take the fact that I called you
Hold on.
insurrection.
Hold on. I don't block it. I barely block anybody.
No. Commissioner, whatever, that was me. You can say whatever you want. Just we have this is like kindergarten, right? You raise your hand, people talk. You can raise your hand and say whatever you want. I promise. No one's going to boot you for that. The issue is when you talk over people and yell at them. So I promise you, if you raise your hand, Mark and I will come to you and you can say whatever you want. Just let us come to you. Just don't interrupt everyone. That's all. That's all.
Everybody up here is an
People have
adult.
said things about you, so you have the chance to respond. Just don't do it while people are talking. So just let us go to the hands. As you can see, hands are up, and then we'll come to you. I promise. Now, whether you can hold yourself until then, that's another story. I don't know.
We should take a
But
side bet.
yeah, I'm. What are we going? Are we going 3-1 against?
Yeah, there's no way she's gonna ride out.
Yeah,
these
there's no.
three
Well, that's up
hands,
to
no
her.
matter how fast I move through them.
Well, we have 3 hands and then Commissioner Aguino. So we have Jack, we
We should
have
put a
G, we have
scrotum shirt on the
Ashley, then we
line.
have her. So
Yeah.
I'm going to unmute, go to Jack, and then we'll make our way over. Jack, go ahead. Bud.
Crypto, I wanted to know, did we do a deep dive yet on the horns?
What do you mean?
Jake, when did you make the decision, hey, I'm going to put these on my head today?
I have been dressing that way for over 10 years. I've been a spiritual activist for that same amount of time.
Oh, okay. I was going to ask if your great grandfather was a Viking. So you said I'm going to paint up my face today, and I'm going to charge. Weren't you concerned you were going to draw a little bit of negative attention to yourself?
I'm not concerned. I'm not concerned at all. Like I said, I've been dressing that way for over 10 years with the face paint, with the horns, going shirtless. You know, I've been doing it for a long time, and it is shamanic regalia. I do it for ceremonial purposes. And no, not bashful, not afraid, not worried. I don't care what people think, man. You care what people think, you are their slave.
That's phenomenal. So at what age did you have to start putting your balls in a wheelbarrow to roll them around?
Well, you know what, man? You know what's funny is that when I first started wearing that stuff, I went down to Mill Avenue in Tempe here in Phoenix, right by the University of Arizona State University. It's where all the college kids hung out. And oh man, I was nervous as hell. But after doing that a couple of times and finding out that, you know, drunk college kids don't care about politics or the fact that they're destroying the world, it was like the testing ground. And after that, I really stopped caring. And I found out that a lot of people really liked it. Actually, a lot of people loved it. They wanted pictures.
No, it's fucking hysterical, dude.
Wait.
I give you
Let me
credit.
ask you this, Jake. How many girls' phone numbers you get in that stuff?
In all honesty, I didn't get much numbers. I got my ass grabbed a time or two, but I couldn't, I didn't quite see. It was a sea of people. So I was like, who just touched my ass? But no, not many numbers. But a lot of looks and a lot of photos.
Jake, if you get a free scrotum shirt, I guarantee you're going to get a lot of phone numbers.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
What happened to our commissioner? Did she leave?
Yeah,
She just left.
she was
I
doing so
know.
good. She couldn't handle it
Yeah,
anymore.
she couldn't do it. She couldn't do it. I was texting with Mark. I was like 3-1. She doesn't hang
I
around.
couldn't believe it. I actually couldn't believe she was that cool for that long, Jake.
That means she was just coming up to to just spew outrage.
And watch the video.
That's
Watch the
all she
video
does.
up in the nest.
That's
Watch
all
the
she
video up in
does
the
in
nest, guys.
DC. That's all she does in DC. Like literally,
That's
she
okay.
she stands outside with her megaphone, and she just screams for like 3 hours straight. She just sits there, and is just like you're all insurrectionists.
We
You're all
call
gonna
that
die.
commitment.
Yeah. Her. You know what?
And that got her elected in DC.
Oh God,
Yeah, apparently.
We should probably get her and Cliff a date. See how that works out for them.
Watch the video. I'm telling you, watch that video because she openly admits that she went into the building, and like why is she a commissioner? Why isn't she arrested? What is going on here?
Yeah,
Jake, you should file a 14th Amendment challenge to our next election.
That is a great idea.
You guys are awesome.
Let's bounce the hands, Miss G. How you doing?
Better than you are.
Oh
Miss G,
God.
remember, this is your chance to criticize him. He asked.
No, I didn't ask. Mark made that part of whatever the fuck we're doing tonight.
Oh, wow. Yeah. You see, I sauntered in late, so I wasn't getting it all.
Shipley,
But if I have an opportunity, well, I'm
Well,
back.
do it then. Let's go. Bring your best. Come on.
Come on, Miss G, go get them.
Listen, Pizza Bagel, you're lucky I'm feeling down today. So you'll get a little reprieve. So I'm going to ask my boy.
I don't want it. I want the caliente spicy heat. Come on.
Yeah, but I'm not Spanish. I'm Italian.
So bring me the pasta sauce. Let's go.
You suck and you know it. How about that? Anyway, and you take cheap shots. So I only came up here because I wanted to give a shout out to my man, Beard Vet. I just want you to know, buddy, I bought the coffee. I bought the mug without using a promo code because I like you that much.
Well,
Keep
that
on
fucks
doing
us
what
over.
you're doing. Excuse me?
That fucks us over. The promo code money comes to us.
Well, I couldn't figure it out, so.
Jesus, G. At the
I
bottom
don't
of his
throw enough
checkout
money
page,
your way.
it literally says
What
promo
do you
code.
want? Are you?
My
do
child,
I have you as a
my
dependent?
child can't have dinner
Give me
tomorrow.
your social. I'll start writing your shit off every
My
January.
child cannot have dinner tomorrow. Thank you, Miss G.
What?
I'm going.
I said my child will not be able to eat tomorrow.
You have children?
And a cat and a dog.
I'll send you some food. I'll in dry ice. I'll feed your family. Don't you worry. But anyway, this was entertaining. Yeah, that's all I really had to say is, I wanted to pump my boy Beard Vet. So thank you for giving me a mic.
Come on, G, take one shot at him.
I just did. I said he's just not a nice person to me.
Jack, she's already taken food off my table. Isn't that
quiet, Crypto?
Listen, Johnny Dice wants to know if you and Cliff were out clubbing it. That's why you showed up together both late.
So you're saying because we're both Jewish, we were hanging out together?
No,
Wait.
Johnny Dice. He posted it in the thread. I'm just trying to help a brother out. Right, Johnny? You know I got your back, Johnny.
That's very anti-Zionist of him.
He just said he wanted to know if you guys were out clubbing.
Yeah,
we were at town, smoking the cigars.
We were at the deli eating bagels.
Bagels. That's
Cliff
it.
talks about that at least once every.
No pastrami on rye.
With
a mustard spear.
And
pickles.
Where you go?
Pardon?
I said it depends where you go. Now Cliff is trying to come up. He wants to talk about pastrami on rye. I think.
Listen, if you need good Jewish Delhi, you need to come to New York.
That is true. That is
Cliff
true.
wants that chick's phone number.
What chick?
Which
What
chick?
chick, Jack?
The commissioner.
Oh,
Hey,
Oh,
oh
please. I
yeah.
wanted her to rip. Because I am like a little down today.
The only thing
I
she
don't
was
know if
gonna rip
anyone
was a
noticed.
fart.
It's 19 years ago today that I had to put my beloved boots to sleep. And I'm just feeling a little melancholy. So, I need someone to direct some frustration and anger out. So y'all don't piss me off, especially you, bagel pizza boy.
All right. Well, Mark, see if you can bring back Commissioner Psycho. And in
I
the
just
interim,
posted that picture of her feet from me on the porch.
all right, I'll take a look.
Commissioner Psycho.
Commissioner Psycho. Let's go to Ashley, who's endorsed by every single person in Arizona.
including me.
Uh, oh my gosh. Hello, everybody. This is my first time talking on Spaces, so I'm really excited.
Oh,
Welcome,
welcome.
to
Thank,
Wake Virginity here.
oh, thank you. Well, we love Jake. He's awesome. He's a great guy. And I wanted to say hi to Ryan. I've never met Ryan, but I know your dad. And I think it's awesome that you're running for Congress too. So we need to get good people like you and Jake in there for sure. And your
Thank
dad,
you.
of course. Yeah.
I'm sorry you had to know my dad first.
Oh no, he's awesome. Actually, he endorsed me too. He's on my list. Yes, he's good. But yeah, so I don't know. I just wanted to say hi, and I know it's called up, so I
I
thought I'm going to use the
I have a
opportunity.
I have a question for Ashley.
Oh, I bet you do, Shipley.
Ashley, I'm looking at your profile. I notice you don't follow
I'm
me.
sure
Why
you
is
are.
that? Did
Silence.
you
Because
did
you won't buy a T-shirt.
That's true, because you won't buy the cat T-shirt.
I would buy a T-shirt for sure. I would totally
Oh,
buy it.
oh, actually, it's up top in the nest. It's a
It's up top
scrotum.
in the
So,
It's
nest.
your
so
time,
you
Ashley.
missed Ashley, you missed your opportunity. Tell Ship you'll follow him if he wears the damn shirt.
Oh yeah, you can make
Okay,
this
I will.
happen.
Yes.
There it is, Shipley. There it
Yeah.
is.
And
She'll
I'd
follow
just like
you
to
by all.
Decisions.
I'd just like to say it got
no, you're not over the bar, guys. Sorry.
I just want to tell
Oh.
anybody in the room, if you're not following Ashley, you should be. And also, if you're
Oh,
not following Jenny, who's also in the audience, she's a listener, you should be. These women are incredible women. They're both alphas, and they are both full of like spirit and patriotism and strength and wisdom. You should be following these women. I hope and pray that every woman in America follows their example, because they're amazing people.
Yeah,
oh,
on
thank
that
you so much, Jake. That's
that
awesome of you to say and so
Oh, there you
kind.
get
And
the
I think
now
commissioner
the
back
same
in
thing
here. I
about
hear
Jenny.
that.
She's
hey,
a
hey,
wonderful woman. So you guys are great. I've been listening to Spaces like all day, all this stuff, and they're just all the messages like the stuff that Jake you're doing with Jenny is amazing. And then even earlier tonight, like, there's just so much that you all talk about, and it's just like I feel like I'm always learning something new. So I love to see so many people coming together and having like good conversations and even fun with it too. I mean, I like to have fun, so I like the fun stuff thrown in here and there.
Now you're talking.
I was gonna say something kind of crazy, but I won't. I'll reserve that for my next time.
all those great things you said, Jake. I echo,
But
and I want to call attention to somebody who is none of those things, and
oh,
see
you did.
if
But yeah,
and
so thank you so much for having me on.
I don't think she can hear you, Bill. Yeah, Ashley, Bill's talking, dear.
Oh, I
I don't
didn't
know
hear.
if maybe she can hear. Sometimes there's a
Well, it's
technical
good
glitch here,
because
but I want
you
to
let her
find out.
down,
I
Shipley,
want to
by
find
not
out.
getting a shirt.
I want to find out if somebody who's none of those things is hiding under his avatar. Geyer, is that you under former feds? Speak up, Brad.
He's calling you out.
You got to hit the mic.
Yes,
Dear.
it is.
Okay.
Tonight
Now,
I'm at the former Fed's
now,
helm.
now the comedy begins. We have Brad Geyer in the room with a microphone.
And I am overseas right now, meeting with plaintiffs who were injured or next of kin who had loved ones who died shortly after getting the Pfizer vaccine, and also hunting down victims of remdesivir, which is manufactured by Gilead. And we have active motion practice going on in the
Well,
Northern District of California against Gilead
okay,
for
just so everybody
remdesivir.
knows, Brad represented Ken Harrelson in the first Oath Keeper trial, and got him acquitted on the seditious conspiracy count, and got him a sentence of 48 months. He should be out now or very close, right?
Any day should
Any
be
day.
the next week or so.
Okay, that's good news. And you beat the government recommendation by how much?
Oh, I guess about, was it 8 years?
Yeah,
I think it was 8 years. I think they wanted 12 for 10.
I still got you. I got
But
150 months less for Roberto.
yeah, oh no, and I send anybody who calls me on a January 6th matter, I refer them right to the Bill. You're on the short list, as you know. You know more about this space than anybody, and it's been wonderful working with you. And people don't know that for that first Oath Keepers trial throughout 2022, you were in the background and also in the foreground and shouldering a lot of the common responsibility to do a lot of the motion practice in the lead up there too. So thank you very much for everything you did.
Well, you touch on that, Brad, and in all seriousness, I appreciate the comments. I think and I'm going to bring this spaces down for just a moment because this is kind of one of the reasons why I've asked Jake and Mark and Crypto to do this. I've been taking a lot of fire online because I'm sideways with a couple of DOC guys, and they've, rallied their troops against me and are, calling me a DOJ plant and I'm not actually working in the interest of my 40 clients. I'm actually just selling them down the river, blah blah blah, and all my clients hate me and I get fired. Brad, we've worked together on these cases now for 2 years. You have a point of view?
Yeah, I would eagerly work on any case I possibly could with you. Um, I think being at the vanguard and sort of being in a leadership position as the government opposition, there's a lightning rod quality to that, and I think you're experiencing that. Um, you know, my own view is that the enemy, the common enemy, is so big, it's so vast that we'd all be better off if we did less infighting. The reason I mentioned I see there being three common platforms. The first is CBDC. At the vanguard of that movement, or is the China Freedom Movement. These are ethnic Chinese that live around the world, and if you get into a room with them, you'll recognize that you all hold the same things dear. The second platform is medical freedom and freedom from the vaccine, maintaining the sanctity after Nuremberg of informed consent. That's the second one, and the third one was January 6th. These are all government ambushes, in my view. So we all got ambushed. And rather than focus on the shortcomings of bills, and I believe that the shortcomings are very few, if you can even identify them, we should all focus on the common enemy. That's our government right now, because of its misguided um, enforcement policy now for some time, is in the process of eradicating liberty and freedom. And it's incumbent on all of us to engage in peaceful disobedience that's legal, express our dissent, open our mouths, because right now our best defense is our voices, and link up with people to the left and right of you, eradicate these ridiculous this infighting. Uh, Bill jumped in on. Bill came out of nowhere on the first Oath Keepers in the wake of the first, what was really the first effort to kind of join forces on a common defense. And Bill at that time knew that he was going to be in the second, ultimately it was the second and third group, and he threw himself in and gave us all access to his more than 20 plus years as an active, extremely active former assistant U.S. attorney. And if you know how that works, it's probably not an 80-20 rule. That's probably one of the rare places in government where it's not. But Bill did more than his fair share. Let's put it that way. In on the other side of the table, as a prosecutor, as a working prosecutor, he knows where the levers are. He knows where the buttons are. He knows what are bullshit arguments. He knows what doesn't work, and he's able to mount defenses at his economies of scale. First off, I sent somebody to him. I'm not even going to mention the name, but it would have taken me a whole lot of work just to get up to speed. And I'm a former prosecutor myself. I'm a former federal prosecutor myself, 21 years myself. But as fate has had it, I've had to focus on so many different areas that I just can't be the expert on January 6th. And Bill is, like I said, if I got a question, I'll he's on my short list, and he always answers the phone. Sorry, demagogued a bit. I apologize for that.
That's cool, Brad, and it's great to hear from you.
And Brad and I
Is
are,
that Mark?
Yeah,
yeah,
it's me.
Hey,
Brad,
Mark, how you doing, buddy? I recognize your voice.
Doing well, man. Thanks for coming in.
Brad and I are part of a group of maybe 4 lawyers who will be representing Steve Baker, the journalist who has done a lot of the video sleuthing, along with Brad, working closely with Brad. If the government decides to pull the trigger and actually charge Steve, which they have threatened to do, but so far have held off. But we're already well underway in planning how we will respond if that happens.
So, if then I met Steven doing what he does out there in the courthouse. If that happens, guys, I would love, not unlike what I did with Richard's case. I would love to get close and report that for you guys.
Oh,
That's an
Mark, if
incredible
there's a
story.
way that you could get support to actually be a member of the media and sit in the press room like you did for the Barnett trial, I mean, a lot of what we've been able to unravel, and my message, because I know the agents and the career civil servants who are in the U.S. Attorney's offices, somebody's tasked with listening to this, and I will urge them. They're under an obligation to protect the Constitution and to protect the institutions that they were. They're just basically stewards. We were there before. When Bill and I were in the Department of Justice, we were caretakers and stewards of that Department of Justice mission. And I'm not going to point any fingers, but things have really gotten off track in the last 5 years. The enforcement programs have been gutted in areas where it provides, things that cause actual harm and threat to the United States. Those enforcement programs have been gutted, whereas the ones that just aren't that significant, they're drawing all the investigative resources. January 6th being parading grandmas probably being the greatest example of that. So I talk to you as I'm a former career civil servant. Unless you push back within your agency, I'm talking to courtroom staff. The courts are way out in front of their skis in the district. In 5 years, this is going to look completely different. There's very few people, maybe Bill on the phone, who's seen as much video as I have that's under protective order. This is all going to unravel. The rules of engagement and the use of force was outrageous. There's no explanation, no justification for it. The suppression of intelligence in the U.S. Capitol Police was outrageous. We're going to be able to document that. So people, no one has higher respect for career civil servants than Bill and I. But it's time to start thinking about protecting the mission, protecting these institutions, because they're way out in front of their skis.
Thanks, Brad. I do appreciate it. I am gonna watch and see where that case goes. I hope it doesn't go. I mean, I hope not, but if it does, I'll be there. Yeah, stick around, Brad. Re-raise your hand and anything, further, just jump in. All right.
Thanks. Great to be here. Thanks for having me. Oh, by the way, shout out to Joe McBride. He's getting some surgery. I know Mark and Bill both are good, strong friends with Joe McBride, but uh, he's had a lingering issue regarding his back, and he's in the middle of reconstructive surgery. It's pretty painful. I don't see him on here, but my thoughts and prayers uh, go out to him.
Well, thanks for letting me
He's
know.
he's
That,
another
that's
great
helpful.
fighter too.
Yeah, we'll reach out to him. Thanks for the heads up.
Great, sure.
Okay. Do stick around, Brad, as long as you can.
Mark, Corey.
Yes. Yes, sir. What do you got?
I said you want to go to Corey.
That's where I'm
Yeah.
going. Yep.
All right, cool. Corey.
Hey, hey, Jake, man, sorry to break it to you, but Patricia never went in the building, so you're gonna have to find some other facts on that, bro.
Oh, well, there's the video. In the video, she says that she did.
Okay, well, in that case, I'm your father, and that's true because I said it, right?
Well, I'm just saying what she said. I wasn't there and I don't know. So I'm just saying what she said in both of these videos that I placed in the nest. So, I mean, I don't know. You take it up with her. Why is she going to these J6 rallies or these J6 protests and saying that she went in the building as a counter protester on two separate occasions? That doesn't make sense to me. Why would she do that? Do you have an explanation for that?
I have no idea, but she didn't go in the building.
And how do you know? Were you with her?
No, but I've watched that entrance that she was at. Every bit of footage that's there for people coming in, and she definitely didn't come in the building. Sorry, bud.
Okay, so you watched every entrance all around the building and you didn't find her? Is that what you're saying? So you spent like the hundreds and hundreds of hours of watching everybody go through the building? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, we've talked before, Jake. I've told you quite a bit about your own entrance and the alarms blaring and all that, and how you didn't stop any of the people coming into the building. I don't know what's such a surprise about that.
So you did what the DOJ has done? Is that what you're saying?
I have
You comb through all the footage as what, an independent journalist? So where did you get all
Yeah.
the footage of the CCTV footage? Are you an attorney?
No, there's stuff that's been publicly released, right?
Well, yeah, but there's 44,000 hours of footage. And what I'm asking you is, how did you get a hold of the CCTV footage that in some cases attorneys didn't have for quite some time and that hasn't been released to the public?
You understand that's not 44,000 hours on the east door, right?
So you're saying that you know for certain that she only came in through the east door?
Yeah, she was never spotted on the west side of the Capitol.
Okay, and how do you know that?
Because once again, I've combed through all that footage. She was never on the west side.
Okay,
Okay, so Corey, I have a quick question for you,
If
bud.
I can
Sure
if I
thing.
can jump in here, so I know
Real
more about
quick
the.
question. Corey, do you believe that people outside the Capitol that were at J6 but didn't enter the Capitol, do you think those people should be prosecuted?
Not the majority of them, no, but there's some people that probably should be. People that tore down signs, fencing, property damage, stuff like that. Wouldn't you agree?
Ryan Zink, did you go inside the building?
I did not.
Did you get prosecuted?
I did.
Were you convicted of a
1512
felony?
charge.
I never went in the building. I never assaulted anyone. I never moved a barricade. I'm actually on video protecting police officers at that very same porch that she's standing on 3 feet away from me. And I was charged with a trespass and a felony. And I didn't do anything.
Brad, you had something for Corey, I
Yeah,
think.
well, my question is what? So there's multiple doors in the east, and most of the door, actually, the only door that has an overhead camera is on the Capitol, which is essentially the equivalent of the Columbus doors, but to the, I guess it would be to the south. So there's really no surveillance video that is on the exterior doors. As a general rule, on the interior doors, there's an angle from the interior wall facing away, sort of the direction if you're entering the building. There's a camera on both sides, and then there's a camera well into the Capitol pointing at the door. So almost like a four-way crossfire on most of the doors. By and large, that video is very hard. If that's been made public. I'm unaware of it. It's very hard to find if it's even been made public.
Let
I
me
find it
let
hard to
me let
believe
me
that.
Brad, hold on. Let me add something here. Brad Geyer has watched more video than any lawyer I know working in the J6 cases. And he watched video when the lawyers had access to the video. We could access it through a database made available to us that was not available to the public. No lawyer I know has watched more video than Brad. So argue with him at your peril.
Sure thing.
So, like, if there's an issue of whether somebody went in, if you give me an idea where we think the person went in and around what time, it's really not difficult at this point to figure out if that actually occurred. But to get to that point, it took thousands and thousands of hours and probably tens of people that basically created the crowdsourcing effect that and that structure around and you know, this is part of what I think the tragedy in this is that early on they put everything under a protective order and they took all the discovery and they put it under a capital siege production unit to, you know, unprecedented events that had tragic consequences. So like it's, you know, it was, I guess when we met Bill, which is right after the the Texas group of attorneys came in to represent. It was right after the last superseding indictment. Well, there was a small one, but the one that brought sedition charges around January, February. The attorneys that up to that point literally had no access to the video record at all. Around say February of 2022, the people inside the gulag got tablets and they started to do reviews and we were able to network some of that, and the reviews were actually quite good because a lot of these guys are former intel officers or they're just very careful in what they do, former military law enforcement. But I mean, uh, it's and this is why, like, the message to the court staff, the judges, and by the way, the prosecutors that I've interacted with know almost nothing about the video record. It comes to them as a bigger surprise than it's going to come to the general public. And I see video cameras that have been just recently released that show overheads of like the crowd, so you get a sense as to how the crowd moved, which is very confusing and was prone to get people caught up in following the crowd. Um, you know, all this is going to come unraveled over the next 1 to 2 years. So these courts really, like, this whole idea about that this prosecutor that's coming from nowhere is going to charge Steve Baker. I think that's a big mistake because there's a lot about Steve Baker's story that the government doesn't yet know. We know everywhere that Steve Baker went. We have a good idea as to who the 100 plus other quote unquote journalists were who went into the Capitol. If you do a correlation analysis as to who's getting charged and why, it's really hard not to conclude that it's based on content of speech. It's very, very hard to conclude otherwise. So this is going to be like a dirty laundry exercise that's going to show a lot of warts of the system that as a former colleague, and as somebody who is very interested in preserving the integrity of our institutions, to include the courts and the Department of Justice, it's a really, really bad idea to be charging the guy who, but strictly by his own stick-to-itiveness and working on it for months, he has essentially proved that all the Oath Keepers prosecutions, that the verdicts were made possible based on perjured testimony of two crucial U.S. Capitol Police witnesses, Harry Dunn, who testified falsely, and Agent Lazarus, who was the head of security for Nancy Pelosi. And that we never would have known that. Like, that never would have been allowed to have happened. That charging never could have happened if they hadn't have made this heartbreaking decision with the Capital Siege Production Unit to basically put all the discovery under wraps and separate because the line staffs have the Brady obligations. The attorneys entering the appearances are the ones who have the obligation, responsibility to turn over the discovery, and the discovery was outsourced to this capital siege production unit, which we used to joke in-house. But the reason we called it that is because you had to lay siege on it to get any discovery out of it, with like ancient siege, catapults and weapons and things like that to get the stuff out of it. So anyway, yeah, that's so if there's a question as to somebody went in and somebody wants that off, that can be determined. It's not at this point. It's not hard. 6 months ago, it was very difficult. A year ago, almost impossible.
Well, and with that said, I just want to say this because, this is important to note, Corey, that let's say for the sake of argument that what you're saying is correct, that she did not go into the building. Then why is this woman going to J6 vigils and harassing these individuals, telling them that she did go into the building and that they're all a bunch of insurrectionists? Is that the kind of person that we really want to be a DC commissioner? Let's just say for the sake of argument that what you're saying is true. She's lying to these people and she's intentionally trying to incite some sort of conflict where there was none. So one way or another, either she went in and she hasn't been charged and the justice system is corrupt in that sense, or she didn't go in and the system within DC sought to hire this woman to be a commissioner when in fact she's a liar and a provocateur of people that are not really trying to cause any problems at all for her or anybody else. They're just trying to hold the line and get the truth out about January 6ers and their plights.
And no matter what, she's 8 feet from me on the porch, and I was charged with trespassing. So if we're going to talk about equal application of the law, at a minimum, she has a misdemeanor.
Well, and Andy, you got a 1512 charge, dude. So like, why isn't she getting a 1512 charge? Why isn't she getting an obstruction charge? Why is Ray Epps the only guy that's, other than Nick Fuentes, seen on camera that's telling people to go into the building? Why is he not getting an obstruction charge? Why are they not getting an inciting of a riot charge? The justice system is corrupt in DC. That's why.
Corey, you want to take a shot at that?
Yeah, actually, seeing as we do have some lawyers here, I've always wanted to pick their brains on their thoughts about Ray Epps there, because it's my understanding that what he said on the night of January 5th would likely be protected First Amendment speech.
Well, say what he said and pick a lawyer.
Well, I'm sure that they've seen the video of him saying it, right? It's like I can kind of paraphrase it here, but he said, I'll probably get arrested for saying this, but we need to go into the Capitol. And then he says after that, peacefully. But again, it's, Brandenburg versus Ohio, right? Everybody there laughed at him. It wasn't likely.
They called him a Fed is what they did.
Sure. But it also wasn't likely, and it wasn't there was no immediacy to any of that happening. So that, it would be protected First Amendment speech. You might not like it. It was stupid of him to say. He's a moron. But
No,
he's not.
he wouldn't be. This is Brett Gower. He wouldn't be prosecuted for what he said, for the content of his speech. He would be prosecuted if he was getting material support by the U.S. government, if he was a pocket CHS, and if his role as some sort of a government agent or an agent of an NGO, if there's a carve-out NGO, was to incite people to go and to basically shape mass conduct and mass movement towards the Capitol. Now, the following day, he can be seen engaged in the same conduct where he's actively moving everybody to the Capitol prior to the end of the president's speech. And just when the bombs were identified at the RNC about 12:43, 12:44 thereabouts, which caused a disruptive change in comms for the U.S. Capitol Police between comms 1 and comms 2, Epps seems to be leading what looks to be a push through. It's a somewhat peaceful push through, if there's such a thing. There's a little exchange between him and Ryan Samso, but the bottom line is there was a concerted effort that pushed through, and there's only 5 officers there. Later on, he can be seen in front of the Capitol by the stage. He seems to be organizing conduct, organizing what the government, in other contexts, would say was, violent confrontation, coordinating efforts by violent provocateurs. He engaged in pushing the sign, using it as sort of like a way to push police back. And we know that if you look at that video, there's a couple defendants who were charged precisely for that, standing right next to him. He's working the front line, the skirmish line with police. Seems to be engaging with people that we've identified as being provocateurs, who we think, look, there's an IG report on CHS and the FBI, and I think it was 2020 or 2021, and they were very open about having lost track of their CHS. Line agents, in order to get promotions to 13, 14, etc., you got to develop sources, and you have sources that have different levels of formality. And it seems to me, based on tracking the Whitmer investigation, that standards have substantially changed since I was in the Department of Justice, since Bill was in the Department of Justice. Like we couldn't Venmo a confidential human source money. We couldn't give a gift of an iWatch to a confidential human source. Okay, so no one's like I'm a First Amendment. I actually take First Amendment cases. I'm a stickler for it. But he wouldn't be prosecuted for. And by the way, talk about being treated with kid gloves. I mean, just if you just go and just caucus the community with these ridiculous search warrants that are being executed with armored vehicles, with battering rams, and I have somebody, I won't out the person, but she's in the police car leaving the scene, and the sniper teams asked for approval to demob. All right, this should have been a voluntary arrest, a self-surrender, and they brought out 30 people with a caravan of over 10 up-armored vehicles. All right, so again, this is a sign that something in terms of, and I'm not blaming any individuals. I think the problems are deeper than that. I think I don't know if there's a bug in the code. I don't know, maybe AIs run amok. I don't really know. But we got to get this straightened out. I mean, these are good people in the government, and the way that it's getting translated, and by the way, it's causing significant harm to the perceptions of the American people. And like, I'm worried about the goodwill and the public image of the FBI. I'm concerned about that. I'm a stakeholder in that. I want that to be a respected, trusted organization. And I'm not going out on a limb here to say that that's now a subject of great disagreement and acrimony. I mean, I hear people calling for the abolition of the FBI, which is just like shocking to me. So, no, I mean, we need a new January 6th committee that's legitimate, and they need they need to staff up. I mean, this weaponization committee, the proof to how serious they are the staffers, is the budget they get and the staffers they hire. So a January 6th committee, if it was going to be real, you need 100 plus staffers. You need a big budget. You need to get all of the pretrial services files and probation files. Of about 300 people who are suspected to be CHS, you need PTS and you need probation. And you need 5 years of tax returns. And let's get down to the bottom of like who is really on the government payroll. Because I can guarantee you the American people are not in with these the government should it seems to me like there were so many people on long leashes running around on January 6th with strange motives with lack of accountability that you can see how it could easily have unraveled the way that it did. And when you really look at it, it looks like it was design failure. Like somebody uh, among the people that were participants in the events of the day, some of them had suspect motives. And we need to get down to the bottom of that, because the bottom line is our elected representatives, if you accept the narrative, were put at risk. And we're in a system where our elected representatives always have to be protected. Not a hair should get disturbed on any elected representative's head or any employee of the federal government, period. That's what makes us different than every other system. So we have big problems. Um, uh, but, you know, Ray Epps' First Amendment rights and saying, we all have to go in the Capitol. He wasn't charged with that. And the problem is that he was treated profoundly differently than so many others. And that makes everybody distrust the system. And when so many people distrust the system, it puts us all at risk, because people start thinking about things like self-help, engaging in self-help. And that's not our system. Our system is we have institutions that protect us. Sorry for talking so long.
All right, it's 12:10. We've been going at this over 3 hours now, guys. I don't know um, how much longer you want to keep it going. Can't believe as many people have hung around to listen to this who have, and I thank them all. I think it says something more about all of you than it says about any of us that you stuck around for 3 hours. But maybe we'll have to do this
Impressive.
more than once every 6 months.
Yeah, we definitely can. Jake and Shipley. Let me
Can
check
I
with
say
some.
one thing about linking the movements? This is really important in terms of like ultimate victory. So I've spent a lot of my time getting the medical freedom movement to see the challenges as they see them through the eyes of January 6th. And I think I've been pretty effective in that space of arguing that basically you guys were just the victims of the most garish, the most obvious, the most vulgar ambush, and that everybody's, others are coming next. And so we're going to have our organization is going to be in New Jersey on whenever it is, the 6th or something. I'm out of town, but they're going to, and we're bringing the medical freedom movement, the, uh, the freedom from vaccine movement, of all of that underneath January 6ers to build the movement. And the other one is, as I mentioned before, CBDC. The movement to use cash, prevent the U.S. government from going to a CBDC. There's an entire, very large constituency of ethnic Chinese that are in the United States and around the world who are standing as one against the CCP. It's you have to be living under a rock not to suspect that the CCP has made significant inroads into our university system, state and federal governments, and that it may be adversely impacting our operations. So I'd encourage everybody here to reach out to their fellow humans, only some of whom are Americans, some of them are in Europe, some of them are in Asia, and find that common ground. This is an international movement. And unless we, it's not really clear to me who the um, ultimate opponent may not be our government. It may be higher than that. It may be the WF. If you guys are familiar with the WEF, the World Economic Forum. It could be some other constellation of interest. I'm not really sure. But we need bodies. We need concerted. Uh, we need everybody who cares about maintaining the Constitution as the supreme law of the land and protecting freedom and liberty to join together on all fronts. We have to push against this. Enough infighting. I vouch for Bill Shipley, for God's sakes. There's no reason why he should have just jumped in on a defense that he wasn't getting paid for it. He starts just, I mean, I don't know anybody would do that. So focus on the main enemy. Let's get rid of this infighting. Let's try to join forces. A lot of this infighting are with people that generally agree on the big things. All right, thanks for that. I appreciate it. And thanks for letting me blather on.
Thanks, Brad. Here's what we're gonna do, guys. We're gonna Corey and Spooky. Keep it brief, guys, please, because this is the end, and then we'll go to, of course, our guests for their final thoughts. So, maybe a little less adversarial. Just shoot your shot, Corey and Spooky. Go ahead, Corey.
Cool. Hey, sorry, man. I didn't want to interrupt, but I wanted to make sure I was hearing you right. I thought you were saying you're a big, defender of First Amendment, everything, and I just wanted to clarify. You don't think, and I know he wasn't charged, but you don't think Ray Epps, excuse me, should have been charged with incitement for what he said on January 5th, right?
He just said that, dude.
We
He
don't.
just
We
said
don't.
that.
Yeah, I did say that, but we don't have enough evidence, so we don't know really anything
No, I
about
know.
Ray
Yeah,
Epps. We haven't seen his phone traffic. We haven't seen who's paying him. We haven't seen what his meetings are. There's been no interest in him. The government. We've been asking for freaking discovery since the very beginning. I had multiple discovery requests on Ray Epps. I didn't get jack shit.
sure.
So no, I don't want to. I don't want to wave the Pope. Give him a ceremonial. Like I don't know what his deal is,
Right.
and
Yeah,
we should know that. Yeah.
appreciate it.
I'm
Thank you.
opposed to prosecuting people for what they say. And by the way, if you look at these sentencing proceedings on January 6th, his preoccupation with the text and what people said in the heat of the moment, it's it, it's to me it's terrifying. A lot of January 6th is based on that, and how the courts lack self-awareness on that front. I don't understand it.
It's because they're corrupt. I'm just saying. It's because they're corrupt.
Yeah.
That,
Okay.
and that's why.
Okay, everybody. Let's let Corey go back to sedition hunters and let's move on.
Thank
Spooky.
you. Yeah,
Spooky, go ahead.
sedition hunter.
Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Corey. Spooky. Go ahead.
All right. Hey, thanks. Jacob Chansley. Wow. Great to meet you. Hey, quick compliment. I watched the video where you went into the Capitol, and when you took that right turn, I went, wait, I rewound. I thought, oh, he is taking care. I really wanted to know what happened in that little coffee room. So you're taking care of things, right?
Yeah, I was stopping somebody from stealing. Now, granted, it was just muffins from a break room, but my motives were clear. It's about the principle of the matter.
Yeah, kudos for that. That was a very human thing. I just want to compliment you on that. I am calling in from about 59th Avenue in Thunderbird, so I'm in your district. Questions? First of all, do you have a website yet? I couldn't find anything. And are you planning on hosting any town halls? And are you doing any kind of pre-election voter outreach to find out what we need in the district?
Yes, to all of that.
We
To start, my website is shamanforcongress.com. It's shaman, FOR, congress.com. I'll actually place the link up in the nest so that you can have it. And unfortunately, we're going to be moving the commissioner's 2 videos where she said she went into the Capitol, but that's okay. The link is up in the nest now. My campaign website is there. When it comes to like voter outreach and town halls and stuff like that, I'm going to be going to like local establishments or like parks and stuff like that in the area. I've gone to a number of LD meetings already. There's going to be a couple of other speaking events that I've been booked for. I am collecting signatures, but I can only get libertarian, independent, and no party affiliation signatures because I'm running as a libertarian. But in the general election, anybody can vote for me no matter their political party.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks,
All
Spooky.
right. Be looking forward to your initiatives. See if there's any referendums or any recalls you may have in mind. So I'll keep an eye on your website. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank
Shipley,
you.
appreciate everything and your patience tonight and taking all the questions. We went long, but thanks. And what are your final thoughts?
Who are you talking to?
Shipley, as in you.
Oh, that Shipley.
Yeah.
No,
Hey, I apologize. I apologize. One quick thing. I'm going to put something up in the nest. It's actually I
Come on,
found
Spook.
the
I'm trying to wrap.
okay. I found the Ray Epps stuff. I'll send that up to you.
Thank you. All right, Ship. Go ahead.
All right. Okay. I'm going to cut to the chase here. I'm not going to hold back any secrets. I communicated to Crypto and Jake a desire to see if they were interested in coming into this spaces tonight. And I plan on doing a little more media in the next 4 or 5 days, around the January 6th anniversary. And I'm doing it because, I'm taking on more clients and the coffers have, run a bit dry. And I know from my experience in the months of January to March last year, I was in trial and that made it worse. But, the donations slow down. I did not want to. This was not plan A, B, C, D, or E. Basically, doing these cases and constantly going online to try to raise the money to keep doing these cases. Um, that wasn't how I got started. When I got started, there was supposed to be a funding source, and then that funding source lasted for about 2 months, and it disappeared. And at that point, I was into 20 cases, and I had two choices to make. I could walk away and let them all get new lawyers, or I could figure out another way to do it. And I've been stunned by the amount of money that has been contributed. Um, and I've been stunned by the number of people that have sought me out to represent them. I've taken a lot of abuse online. There's a crew that's out to get me because I have called them out for what I think is grifting, basically turning J6 into an employment opportunity. Yeah, it's an employment opportunity for me, but I'm the guy traveling back and forth cross country and spending, 130 days in hotel rooms and trying 6 cases. So it's an employment opportunity for me, but it's my job. Others have essentially jumped onto the back of J6 and they see it as a piggy bank that they've broken open and are extracting as much value as they can opportunistically. So I had to start a new Give Sin Go fund because of continuing controversy over the fund that already existed because an individual had copied the artwork off my website in an effort to confuse donors, something that the individual admitted, to confuse donors into mistakenly giving to his fund thinking they were supporting my clients. And there's been a report online, I don't know if anybody saw it, as a comment in one of my threads, that somebody said that a friend of theirs had given $50,000 to the other fund thinking it was destined for me, not realizing that in fact they were confused by the successful effort by the other person to siphon off contributions. I've raised $380,000 this way over, about 20 months. The other sites raised $375,000. I only imagine what I could do if I had 650. Um, you know, handling this many cases, there may be some belief that handling this many cases is taxing. It's not. Cases are not that complicated. I actually have memorized pretty much the events of the day in every location. When I go through video evidence now, it's all I'm looking for is where's my client, because I know what happened. I mean, I have had the experience multiple times now. I think Jake will tell you. I've had the experience multiple times now where I'm watching video and I say, well, there's my client. There's another one of my clients. There's another one of my clients. Where's my current client? Because I'm seeing, the same events, just multiple clients in the same place. So, I can't be shy. I'm not shy on Twitter, obviously. I can't be shy in spaces. If I'm going to do this, I put out today, I've taken on the case of a young woman who gave birth last March and went into custody in December. She's got a short sentence, but she's separated from her 10-month-old daughter for nearly a year of her daughter's early life. And so her husband called me and asked, and her only conviction is on 1512. If 1512 gets thrown out in the Fisher case, she doesn't have a conviction either. And her husband called me and said, is there any way we can get her out until the Supreme Court decides 1512, because maybe she doesn't have to serve any sentence and be separated from our daughter. So I took that on today, and I asked him for zero. I don't think it's going to be a whole lot of work. I think I can probably grind out what I need to do relatively quickly, and because I want to act fast. Christopher Royal was sentenced today. He was sentenced by Judge Lamberth, Jake. So I was back before Judge Lamberth today. there were all kinds of problems in the case. Bad decision making by Chris at various points in time. The government wanted 168 months. You know, he got 120, 10 years. I'm not jumping up and down, for joy with a client that got 10 years, but given, the alternatives that were on the table, that's where we ended up. I came into Chris's case last December. I was asked to take over for trial. His previous lawyers had wanted more money than they'd already been paid to try the case, and there was no more money available. And I was just asked, because I had my fundraising, if I could do it. And I said yes. And we had a trial in April. So I came in the case in December, had a trial in April. Now we just finished the sentencing today. The total amount that I've billed Chris for my time is zero. These are the people that I'm choosing to represent. I'm choosing to do it. I am not getting rich. I am choosing to represent individuals who have had difficulties with the lawyers that have been appointed for them, or lawyers that they previously hired, and they don't have any financial resources to make a change. So it's like, okay, I'll help, and we'll make it work on the finance side. Do what you can. Raise money if you can. I made a post to Jake yesterday, which some people took wrong, like I was scolding Jake, or I was being cross with Jake after he had posted, I think he had posted my Gives Him Go request that I'd had, and I simply asked Jake to answer a few questions. Had I ever charged Jake $1? How Jake and I spent hours and hours and hours on the phone. Did I file a long brief trying to get a sentence set aside? Jake came back and answered, yes, yes, yes. The point simply was, I made it work with Jake, and Jake always said, Bill, when the time comes, I'll help you raise money. I'll do what I can. He wrote a big check to his prior lawyer. I'm sure he wishes he hadn't done it, but he did. It wasn't money he had, but we're not going to go into the details of that. So I knew he didn't have it to pay me, but I figured, you know what? I'll see what I can do. We'll make it work. And 2 years later, it's 2 years and 2 months after my first conversation with him. He actually was about to scream at me in the first conversation because he thought I was harassing his mom, who had arranged for us to make contact. So, I'm 62 years old. I've been practicing law for 35 years, 36 years. I've been doing nothing but federal work for 35 years. If I was trying to get rich doing criminal defense work, this would be way down on the list of ways to do it. I would be looking for white collar criminal defendants who could pay, big 6-figure retainers because they're willing to part with every penny they had to stay out of jail. But that's not what I've chosen to do. If I had it all to do over again, I might choose differently. But you can't live life in by winding the clock backwards. So I am where I am, and I've got 22 clients now, still with cases pending before the court here in D.C., and Steve Baker, who's out there in case he gets charged. So, long-winded way of saying I've got to be more public here on Spaces. This is rather than just put out, typewritten, requests for contributions. Yeah, I'm just gonna, there's a group of 200 people here. Obviously, any contributions would be greatly appreciated, but that's not really what I'm looking for here. I'm just looking to help spread the request around with reposts to your own followers.
Well, yeah, definitely, Chip. And so, guys, the direct link is Jake has it posted. It is the first thing in the nest. It's all the way to the left. So, that's up to you. If you can afford it and you want to, send them what you can. And if you can't afford it but still want to help, like Shipley said, share that tweet. It's posted up there. It's by Jake. It starts with my attorney Shipley is representing. So that's there, and it's like I said, he's got 20 plus 20 plus active clients and cases. So, Ship, thanks for asking us to do this. I want to go to Jake. Jake, your final thoughts.
My final thoughts are Bill has not charged me a dime. Every bit of legal work he has done for free. He has at least attempted to get my regalia and my property back, to little avail, from thanks to the DOJ and the FBI being stubborn. But he has he filed the motion to suspend or vacate my conviction and my sentence. He's attempted to arrange things with media members that he knows. He arranged the first space with me in crypto and him. And, if I need legal advice, or like when I was running for Congress, I reached out to him and said, "Hey, this is what I'm thinking about doing. I should be right. I should be okay, right?" And he said, "Yeah, as long as this isn't this and that and this and that is true, and as long as if you're running for federal office, you're good." So, in my experience with Bill, he's a good dude. And I'm really, really kind of upset with the fact that certain parties have chosen to copy the what shall we say, the background or whatever for his website, to intentionally confuse people. That's some bullshit. The vitriol and the division in the J6 community must stop. There's no way that we are going to move as a unified front and get real justice and get certain people out of prison, or get the truth out about what actually happened on that day, fighting amongst each other. That is for certain. And with all sorts of sedition hunters out there like Corey down there, there's definitely people on the other side that are working together to try to demoralize and demonize J6ers, people that got misdemeanor charges, or in the case of Ryan, got a felony charge for just walking on the outside of the building. These are atrocities. And Lord knows if people like Corey and these sedition hunters, if you guys, if the tables were turned and this were Donald Trump's administration and DOJ doing this to you guys, you would be up in arms just as much as the people on the right are up in arms about what's being done to them by the Biden administration. We need equal justice under the law, and that's not something that we have. The fact that trying cases in DC is not the same as trying cases in West Virginia or Arizona is atrocious, and it is a perfect representation of the injustices within our justice system and the imbalance of the scales of justice in our courts. I'm running for Congress as a means of dismantling and disassembling the corrupt system and the corrupt apparatus that destroy all of our lives and seek to subjugate us all. So if that's something that you can support, if that's something that you can get behind, and having a real fair justice system, having a system that works for the people, by the people, then I'm your guy. I will represent you in Congress and your interests. Like what former feds.org was saying about how we don't want to erode the faith in our system. That's exactly what Yuri Bezmenov, the ex-KGB operative that was in charge of psychological warfare for the Soviet Union, was talking about doing when he came over to the United States and defected, and said, this is the Soviets' plan. It's to demoralize you. It's to destroy and destabilize your institutions, to get it to where nobody has faith in the justice system. Nobody has faith in American institutions anymore. And that's essentially what's happening. So Bill's a good dude as far as I can tell. And any attempts to try to say that he's doing this for clout or to discredit him or take money from him, I think is just terrible. And the infighting in the J6 community must stop. We have to unite together as one people in order to actually have a real system for the people and by the people. And that includes people on the left and people on the right, because I guarantee you when the time comes, a left boot or a right boot, it doesn't matter. It's still a government boot on your neck. And one day, the precedent that was set by this administration may very well be turned against you on the left, and you're going to be screaming, whining, and crying from your cells talking about injustice because the person that you think should not be in office is there. So let's try to get real representation in the Congress, real representation in the White House. Let's hope to God that the Supreme Court sees the facts regarding the 1512 charge and actually gives people a reprieve from this injustice system. With that said, God bless you all and God bless America. Thank you for holding the space. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Ryan, Ashley. Thank you, Mark, Crypto, former Feds. Thank you, Michael. And Lala, all of you guys, so much love to you. God bless you.
Thanks, Jake. I appreciate it. Crypto.
Yeah, I'll just make it short. I've known Shipley for a while, and if you can support his work, the link is up there on the far right. And if you know anything about practicing law, criminal defense is a tough area, right? You have the public defenders that take half the clients, and then I'm just speaking from doing it for over a decade. You have clients that usually don't have money, and if they do have money, if they're doing some sort of white collar stuff, they're usually going to some massive firm. Outside of that, a lot of criminal defendants just simply don't have the money. They just don't. So Shipley's doing what he believes in, and he's a good guy, and if you can support him, the link is up there. Whether it's $5, $20, whatever it is, if we all chip in, we can support him.